Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about What If Deku Joined the Heroes Part 1. If you guys enjoy this What If and want to see Part 2, comment down below and let me know before I start. Please do support for more awesome content. And leave a like and don't forget to subscribe to my channel and also share this video with your friends and check out the description in my playlist. So let's start the video. Ua Main Campus, 2xxx. Izuku Midoriya, current wielder of One for All, exited the office of Principal Nezu with Ochako Uraraka in tow. The two had a small notebook and a velvet box stashed in the backpack the inheritor was wearing. Their meeting with the principal had been a success based on the wide smiles and small fits of a celebratory dance they were doing on occasion. Several months prior to their meeting, the two heroes-to-be were whisked away to another dimension thanks, in part, to Mei Hatsum's newest invention. Ever since then, they had waited patiently for the fires of action to die down around them. With Eri safe at UA, the joint training simulation over and done with, and the Paranormal Liberation Front staying quiet, it was time to finally enact their plan. The two entered their one dorm with a crowd of their peers all eagerly awaiting the news, huddled as if they were trying to watch a football game on a small television. They all waited with wide grins on their faces as the duo walked in. "Well, can they come?" Mina Ashido asked. The duo glanced at each other and shared a smile. "Guys, roll out the welcome mats because our friends in the other dimension will be moving in," Uraraka shouted into the air. The class cheered as they delivered the news. Midoriya wrapped his arm around Uraraka and held her close. The gesture didn't go unnoticed by the class, however. They cared little as they were still celebrating the news. Of course, there was Kaminari that spoke up through all of the cheering and commotion. "We already packed up the welcome mats." "Shut up, you dork," Gyro retorted. "Kaminari has a point though," Ada commented, his voice silencing the others as the class rep spoke. "We're just about ready to transfer to the second dorm. There won't be a one for them to join into. Principal Nezu already brought that up." "Ada," Midoriya said, "we move in tomorrow, and we can get them in here right afterward. It gives them some time to get settled before the term starts." The class rep was soon in thought. "Ah yes, having them come in as we're moving in could be a great icebreaker for us. A chance to really bond with our new and temporary classmates would really help us all in the long run." Midoriya smiled. Even on the last day of his term, Ada is still the voice of the class. "All right then, we will see them soon," the speedster asked. "Yep, once we give them the all clear, we'll bring them here," Uraraka said. "And how will you do that?" Momo asked. The duo glanced at each other. "We have our ways. We'll take care of it, no problem," Midoriya said. The class said nothing more as they grabbed the last of their belongings and left the building. With the combined strength of 1A, the transferring of materials from the 1A dorm to the 2A building was relatively easy. As they left the building and Ada and Yaoyorozu locked the doors for the final time, the group all walked down the walkway to where they would be bunking in. The next day, Midoriya and Uraraka were standing just outside the UA barrier. The sun was just rising over the horizon, and being the punctual students that they were, they promised to open the portal at the time they agreed with their friends on. With his backpack now at his feet, the young inheritor reached in and grabbed the velvet box that he had within. Opening the box, he revealed the Janus Stone, the object that allowed them to traverse dimensions and return to their home. As Midoriya raised the amulet, Uraraka spoke up. "You think they're awake yet?" she asked. "Probably. I hope time isn't too much of a factor here," Midoriya responded. Uraraka nodded and yawned. Her hair was still a little messy since they had both rolled out of bed at the same time. "Sleep well, Deku." "A little bit," was his response. The gravity heroine looked at him quizzically. "Nightmares again? Or is Aoyama leaving you cheese again?" Midoriya chuckled. "Seriously, when you told me he appeared on your balcony and just left it all there, it scared me," she exclaimed. "Well, imagine being me when that happened. Honestly, I felt like leaving a bear trap or something out there in case he did it again. But I didn't, because it wouldn't be a nice thing to have a trap there." Midoriya shook his head. "No, because I don't know where to buy one," he said. Uraraka shook her head while trying, and failing, to suppress her laughter. After a few moments to get the image of Aoyama stuck in a bear trap out of her mind, she turned to him for an answer. It's nothing. Just run-of-the-mill nightmares." "Shigaraki." Uraraka reached for his hand and squeezed it. "Deku." "Yeah." She stood straight and looked into his emerald green eyes. I really like this." He smiled. "Me too." The two stayed quiet for a few moments before they separated. He raised the Janus Stone up with Uraraka's phone with it. Immediately the stone began to glow bright red and the world in front of them became distorted. A still image of the Eiffel Tower appeared along with an orange and purple sky. Satisfied, Midoriya turned the stone to lock in his selection. The image disappeared and was replaced by a very familiar portal. Uraraka grabbed her phone from the successor and dialed the number she hadn't used in a while. "Ladybug." "Hey, it works," she exclaimed to Midoriya. "Awesome. Hey, the portal is open, so come on through." She hung up the phone and waited. After a few moments, two figures leapt through the portal and landed in front of the two heroes, 𝗧𝗵𝗃 and 𝗵𝗃. The heroes that had helped them when they were stranded in their universe were finally here. 𝗧𝗵𝗃's suit had changed while she went through the portal. She still had her signature 𝗧𝗵𝗃-esque attire, but now her boots were black as well as her elbow-high gloves. She had light armor on her shoulders and what looked like armored padding throughout her suit. Her mask covered most of her eyes and forehead with the corners drooping down her face. 𝗵𝗃's looked more casual than hers. His full leather attire changed to black pants and boots. His top consisted of a zipped leather jacket and clawed gloves. His ring was still there, but fully black with a green paw in the middle. His eyes were as green as they usually were, slitted and fully green with a shine of the wild child persona he held back home. His ears were real cat ears as well as the tail whipping around behind him. His mask was the same. Once they appeared, the portal behind them closed. 𝗧𝗵𝗃, 𝗵𝗃, 𝗧𝗏𝗃 bellowed, 𝗂𝐴𝐴. They all rushed in and embraced in a massive group hug. Hot damn, it's been too long. Midoriya smiled. I'll say, it's been a long 6 months. 𝗵𝗃 broke the hug. 6 months? Dude, it's been almost 2 years since we last saw you, he exclaimed. The two resident heroes felt their jaws dropped as the hug fully broke. Well, what? 2 years? They both exclaimed. The two miraculous heroes nodded. Yeah, we tried calling and texting but they wouldn't go through. We figured that it had something to do with the rift closing so we left it alone, Kat said. Yeah, besides, there was no other magical artifact in the world that could match the Janus stone. We checked too, 𝗧𝗵𝗃 commented. It was surely a surprise when you called. 𝗧𝗏𝗃 felt tears well up. It's been so long. She smiled. We have a lot to catch up on. The two heroes nodded. Before they took a step toward the Ua barrier, Kat stopped them. Sorry, but this mask is killing me, he said. Same here. Everything feels so artificial here. I almost can't feel my miraculous, 𝗧𝗵𝗃 said. As they moved to remove their masks, the two resident heroes realized that they were about to give up. Wait, hold on. Their masks slid off of their faces. Kat's mask turned his eyes from slitted green to its normal green irises. 𝗧𝗵𝗃's bluebell eyes shimmered in the sun and free from its confines. Now that's better, she said. I'll say. Mine was starting to hurt, Kat said. 𝗧𝗏𝗃 gestured to the two of them. Boo-boo, but what about your identities? The two miraculous heroes glanced at each other and blushed. Well, Kat stammered. That's one of the things we gotta catch you up on. We kinda had a little accident, 𝗧𝗵𝗃 commented. Adrian and I accidentally revealed ourselves after a fight with an 𝗂𝐵. Kat nodded. It was sort of my fault, he admitted. Thankfully, we didn't have to give up our miraculouses. 𝗧𝗵𝗃 nodded. So the only time we use our hero names is during a battle and within earshot of anyone not on the team. Otherwise, it's Adrian, stop goofing around, or Mary, your yo-yo is tangled on that construction crane again. Adrian smiled. You can imagine how many times that happened. Marinette playfully smacked her partner. The two resident heroes laughed before handing them 2 laminated passes. These 2 will get you into UA, 𝗧𝗏𝗃 said. Our principal was really kind to give you guys the go-ahead. Personally, I feel like he just wants to meet 2 beings from another universe. Adrian grabbed his pass and looked over their shoulders. The school itself towered over them and just barely protected by the wall in front of it. He managed to see some movement inside as a wide variety of adults were moving through the building. Come on, Principal Nezu will want to see you guys before we start the day, Midoriya said. The 2 miraculous heroes nodded and followed the 2 resident heroes through the barrier. Meanwhile, inside of the campus and inside a dark room, a lone computer screen turned on. A student walked over and input their password, revealing the secret within. The face of one Tamura Shigaraki appeared along with the pointed face of 𝗧𝗏𝗃. The student saluted to the 2 before the Grand Commander of the Paranormal Liberation Front. Sir, the voice, female, said. Well, are you in? Shigaraki demanded with his raspy voice. The student nodded. I'll get you what you want without a problem. Good. That little brat Midoriya should still be enrolled there. Get what you want from whoever you want, but I demand any information concerning him. I don't care if it's information about a toothache he got when he was 5. The decay villain boomed. The student nodded. This kid must be really important. She muttered. Don't you dare ask questions. A lot is riding on you right now. Screw this up and you're done. Finished. And the computer shut off. The student sighed heavily as she switched on the lights in her room. She grabbed her gray UA blazer and brushed some lint from it. My first year at UA High. Well, this'll be fun. As they traveled through the school, the 4 heroes were in a wonderful discussion. Marinette and Adrian talked about their lives after high school, the traveling they had done to retrieve the once stolen magical artifacts, and even talked about traveling back in time thanks to an 𝗂𝐴. They talked more about their adventures and even about some of the 𝗂𝐴 they had faced afterward, including Miracle Queen. Midoriya and 𝗧𝗏𝗃 were saddened to hear about her and the consequences following that fight, but they acknowledged that was where things changed for the better within Team Miraculous. After that, the two resident heroes talked about some of their own adventures. Marinette and Adrien were shocked and then relieved to hear about Eri, the little girl held captive by the Yakuza and rescued by the Hero Coalition group. What monster does that to a little girl? Marinette expressed as she heard about her captivity. Someone who was hell-bent on changing the world forever, Midoriya said. Thankfully, he won't be a problem ever again. Why you mean? 𝗂𝗧𝗏 shook her head and held up her hands. He was recovered by the police, but his hands were turned to dust. He can't use his quirk anymore, she said. Adrien nodded. And Eri, here, she's staying with us until we can find a forever home for her. And she has control of her quirk. You'll probably meet her later, Midoriya said, if she doesn't mind it. The miraculous heroes nodded as they continued to walk through the hallway. So, 𝗂𝗧𝗏 chimed in. What time period did you guys go to? Hey, Troy, Marinette said. Yikes, Midoriya commented. The brunette nodded. Yeah, it was good to see my miraculous ancestor, but it wasn't cool to see her use that sword to gut people, she said. Then again, it was war. Yeah, a nasty one too, Adrien said. Thankfully, a god's magic can work in the past, present, and future. That's awesome. Though, I wonder what would happen if we time jumped. Where would we go, Deku? 𝗂𝗧𝗏 asked. Midoriya had spaced out for a moment before he was called back to reality. Oh, well, I don't know. When would we go would be the right phrasing though, he said. The bubbly gravity girl giggled. Silly Deku. As Midoriya laughed with her, Marinette and Adrien exchanged glances. Of course, I think I'd want to travel back in time to before quirks were discovered, he said. No future travel. Midoriya shrugged. Well, it would be nice to see where we'd end up, but knowing about our own futures is dangerous, a voice behind them said. All four heroes turned to see Principal Nezu standing right behind them. Well, he was on Snipe's shoulders, but he had a wide smile on his face as he waved to them. Hello, you must be those two heroes from the other dimension. Marinette and Adrien felt their jaws drop as they made eye contact with him. Why, that's right. I'm the principal of this fine establishment. He gestured to Snipe. And this is their new homeroom teacher, Snipe. The cowboy nodded and tipped his hat. Howdy there. Welcome to UA. Hi, he said, his voice distorted thanks to his gas mask. Adrien nodded as he bowed. Pleased to meet you. He placed his hand on Marinette's back and forced her into a bow, making Nezu chuckle. Well, at least they know how to greet us, Snipe commented as he and Nezu returned the bow. You kids prepare ahead of time. The miraculous heroes rose up. Why yes sir, Marinette said. Besides, I'm also half Chinese so adjusting wasn't too bad. Oh yes, and yet you speak fluent Japanese, Nezu commented. The two heroes eyed each other. Sir, you're actually speaking fluent French, Adrien commented. Marinette face palmed. Oh right, I forgot about the rift energy. We're automatically hardwired to speak the language of whatever universe we enter, she exclaimed. Well, it's not like everyone in this world speaks Japanese, Snipe commented. It sure does feel that way sometimes, Nezu commented. But I digress. We're honored to have you two here. I'm sure this'll be a learning experience for the both of us. Marinette nodded. And it's good to put some faces to the people they've told us about. You know, when they were with us in Paris, they spoke the world of you guys. It all sounded like scenes from comic books. She said, some really awesome comic books, Adrien noted. So we are thankful you've let us come. Nezu smiled. Well then, I think we've made a great decision after all. Now then, I suppose we should begin the tour. He patted Snipe on the head and the two led the teens throughout the campus. When the tour concluded about an hour later, the two pros led the teens outside the main building and toward the Heights Alliance area. The two heroes were given backpacks with their school uniforms and their PE clothes as well. As they approached the dorms, Adrien couldn't help but open the bag and look at the uniforms inside with a smile on his face. Adrien found joy in this. Here, nobody knew who he was or how important his name was in the fashion world. Here, he could be just a simple Adrien Agreste, the dashing cat noir in disguise. About 8 months ago to keep our students safe. But now we see that returning to the old system would be disadvantageous as each class has been able to forge stronger bonds when living together. Plus it helps to ensure they don't get into trouble, Nezu explained. Right, there are robots out on patrol during night hours just in case someone decides to leave in the middle of the night to do things. Several months ago, Midoriya and another student were caught fighting by the same security system and were punished accordingly, Snipe commented. In fact, I'm hoping that it doesn't happen in my class. Midoriya froze as if he were blasted by Todoroki's ice attacks. Why yes sir. Good, now let's get to the dorms. I'm certain that these two are tired, the cowboy deduced based off of their trudging through the dirt paths. The two nodded as they approached the two dorms. You two will be bunking on the 3rd level. Already your rooms will have the basics such as a bed and a desk as well as closet space, a functioning bathroom as well as a mini fridge. Your rooms also have a dresser with some fairly standard sleepwear like sweats and pullovers. Everything else will be bought on your own time, 𝗧𝗵𝗲 said. And I'm sure I don't need to go over the rules about a boy and a girl being in a room all by themselves, do I? 𝗵𝗲 felt her face burn bright. And no, it's not necessary, she stammered. 𝗧𝗏𝗏 chuckled as they approached the doors. Already they were greeted by a wonderful sight. Katsuki Bakugo and Ijiro Kirishima were both trying to shove a large sofa through the doors while Yuga Aoyama was lounging on top of it. Tenya Ida was busy trying to motivate them to push harder by waving his hands around. But all it did was keep Bakugo's middle finger raised at him. And yes, he was also yelling at everyone involved. As the group watched, they spotted the pink hair that belonged to Mina Ashido running from the side entrance with a bucket in her hands. She ran toward some plants and threw out the water that was inside. We were set up for failure, she screamed as she ran back inside. Come on, put your back into it. Bakugo boomed at Kirishima. I'm trying. It stuck, I think. You're not trying hard enough. Bakugo, your yelling isn't helping us here. Shut up, Four Eyes. 𝗵𝗏𝗏's eyes were wide. Ooh, it's move-in day, right? She asked. Nezu nodded. They're the last ones to move in because there was an issue with the plumbing in here. I thought it was fixed. Oh my god, it's everywhere. A voice echoed from the building. I guess not. Midoriya face-palmed and began to chuckle. And what's when Bakugo noticed that they were there? Deku, you damn nerd. Make yourself useful and get this Frenchie off. My place here makes this whole scene shine. Aoyama declared. This fueled Bakugo's anger as he put more of his own strength into pushing the sofa. Midoriya and Uraraka ran to help, leaving the miraculous heroes with the teachers. Wow, and I thought our class was extra, Adrien said. 𝗵𝗏𝗏 nodded. Well, I guess it's time to help however we can. Adrien, I'll try to help out here while you go inside and see what's going on, she said. Right, you think our strength carried over to this world? He asked. 𝗵𝗏𝗏 shrugged. One way to find out. And she ran to help with the couch as well, with Adrien running to the side entrance. As Nezu helped himself down from 𝗧𝗵𝗏, the cowboy sighed deeply. Why did I decide to stay and look after them? He wondered aloud. Principal Nezu chuckled. It will be an entertaining year. And if I read the old reports correctly, your class wasn't any better, he said. The cowboy shook his head. But we weren't this bad either. No, you were worse. The two watched for a few moments before walking down the avenue to check on the other classes. Damn it, you're supposed to be helping. Bakugo basically screamed into 𝗵𝗏𝗏's face as she circled the couch. How haven't you lost your voice yet? Kirishima wondered as he kept pushing. I'm just glad he hasn't hit anyone yet, Midoriya muttered. Don't give me ideas. 𝗵𝗏𝗏 rolled her eyes. She grabbed the couch on the side caught on the door hinges. Okay, we need to twist and push at the same time, she advised. Don't tell me what to do, Bakugo bellowed. The pig-tailed hero turned to the explosive boy with a cocked head. Hey, guess what? What? 𝗵𝗏𝗏's eyes were wide. Turn the damn couch. Kirishima and Midoriya snickered. Turn, turn. The couch turned, sending Aoyama to the floor in a shriek. With a final push from Midoriya's full cowl and the rage within Bakugo, the couch flew into the common space and settled nicely in front of Kyoka Gyro with a bucket in hand. Damn guys, awesome work, she commented. Aoyama picked himself up from the floor while rubbing his butt. I fell. Bakugo turned his fury at 𝗵𝗏𝗏 off as he laughed at the Sparkle Hero's misfortune. That's what you get for not helping, he said. The pig-tailed hero found little fault in that argument. What's happening upstairs? 𝗵𝗏𝗏 asked her. 𝐒𝐩𝐢's toilet burst. There's water everywhere and her toilet is in the ceiling, Gyro said. Thankfully there are more rooms in here though. 𝗵𝗏𝗏's eyes widened. Oh, and where is it? Gyro held her hand up to pause the conversation as she ran outside and dumped the bucket of water into the grass. She then came back inside and grabbed the pig-tailed heroine and they both ran upstairs, leaving the guys alone to set the couch wherever they wanted to. Needless to say that it was chaos on the third floor. A few mats were lined outside of a room with water being redirected to an open window just opposite of the door. Mina was carrying another bucket and tossing it out with a large guy with big lips behind her. He was carrying two bigger buckets and copying her movements. She peered inside the room to see Adrien helping a girl with a spiky ponytail get the pieces of the destroyed toilet out of the ceiling. When Adrien looked up to see his partner Injustice in the doorway, his eyes immediately said help as he found half of the toilet seat. Well, what happened here? Gyro moved past 𝗵𝗏𝗏 and grabbed another bucket. The last class left a surprise in 𝐒𝐩𝐢's toilet. Thankfully she didn't use it, she said. I was this close too. I just forgot to grab some toilet paper from the utility closet downstairs. A floating assortment of clothes said, entering 𝗵𝗏𝗏's line of vision. The pig-tailed heroine's eyes widened. Why, you're 𝐒𝐩𝐢. The invisible girl's arms were braced on her hips. "The class's premier expert in stealth ops at your service." The ponytailed girl rolled her eyes. "Thankfully she doesn't spy on us," she said. She stood up and slipped out of the chaotic bathroom. "I'm Momo Yaoyorozu. Nice to meet you." 𝗵𝗃 bowed. 𝗵𝗃 𝗂𝗵𝗃. She rose up and assessed the chaos within. "Sue, what should I do?" "Well, we need to shut the water off, but the school is running a bit slow it seems. We're stretched thin as it is with the guys moving the big furniture downstairs and us." "Well, with this, once the water is off, cleanup will be easier," she explained. 𝗵𝗃 nodded. "I can help with that." "Perfect. I think there's an emergency shut-off valve somewhere here, since the school wanted us to have some version of independence for the future," Momo said. The pig-tailed hero smiled. "I'll find it." She grabbed her yo-yo and ran through the open window. She lassoed the roof and yanked herself skyward. Once on the roof, 𝗵𝗃 searched for the valve. There was some trash, a record player, a few miscellaneous crates and an old poster, but no shut-off valve. She ran toward the edge of the rooftop and scanned what she could see from her position. From there, she spotted her target. The valve was pretty well hidden, probably to discourage anyone tampering with it. Thankfully, she was trained to look for the smallest details. She leapt off of the building and landed right in front of it. The first thing she noticed once she landed was the pain. Her miraculous wasn't protecting her as well as she would have liked, which meant performing risky stunts would probably be a bad idea. The second thing was that, after all this time, she felt slower than normal. Some training here would do some good, she thought to herself. She grasped the valve and turned with all of her might. Its position made it difficult since there were branches in her face, limiting her focus. She continued to use all of her strength when she felt it give just a little bit. Strengthening her stance, 𝗵𝗃 used her full body weight and whatever strength she had to continue turning the valve until she couldn't anymore. Determining that it was enough, she smiled and leapt back into the building. When she re-entered the room, Yaoyorozu and 𝗧𝗏 were busy collecting pieces of the toilet from the ceiling. Thankfully, the water had stopped gushing from the floor like Old Faithful. Adrian was using a mop to direct the water that remained to the open window. 𝗵𝗃 grabbed a towel from Gyro's outstretched hand and helped with the cleanup. Later, "Geez, that took forever," Mina bellowed as she flopped on the new couch. "Yeah, talk about a rude homecoming," Gyro said. "Who in their right mind leaves an explosive in someone's toilet?" 𝗧𝗏, sitting with 𝐒𝐽𝐽𝐲's invisible head on his lap, shrugged. "Sounds like something Kaminari and Kirishima would do though," he suggested. Mina snickered. "Well, maybe I would, but not that powerful." The group laughed lightly as 𝗵𝗃 and Adrian descended from the staircase. 𝐒𝐽𝐽𝐲, upon seeing them, leapt up from her place and ran toward them. "Guys, hey, we've been waiting for you." 𝗵𝗃, sporting her PE sweatpants and a white t-shirt she found in her room's dresser, was taken back at the invisible girl's energy. "Well, you're eager," she commented. 𝗂𝐽𝐽𝐲 shrank back with her invisible hands cupping her face. "Whoops, sorry. But anyway, it's dinner time." The two miraculous heroes glanced at each other. "Already? It's not even sundown yet," Adrian said. "Yeah, but still. We finished everything pretty early this time around," Gyro said as she approached the duo. "Come on." The resident heroes led the miraculous duo to the dining area. Unlike the one-a dining area, which was pretty open, the two-a dining area was behind a set of doors. Once they entered, they were greeted by a splendid surprise. Everyone shouted surprise. Once the doors opened, the miraculous duo nearly leapt out of their skin but gracefully recovered. Behind the bulk of two-a students was a large banner that read "Welcome to UA, Ladybug and Cat Noir." The dining table they stood behind was set with plates of food, drinks, and little paper mache Eiffel Towers between the plates. Even Snipe, after placing an order for maintenance to come by and fix the bathroom, was in attendance. Midoriya and Uraraka were shoulder to shoulder with big smiles on their faces, melting Adrian's and 𝗵𝗃's hearts. "Sorry about the late greeting, by the way," Mina said as she scooted past the duo. "Between the toilet and moving the big furniture in, we were too busy. But now that the worst is done with, we can properly welcome you two to you." Yaoyorozu said. The duo smiled as Ida ushered everyone to take their seats, with plates filled with the day's selection. Everyone said their graces and dug in. Once the dinner was done with, the group decided to partake in some fun. While Kirishima booted up Super Mario Party in the living quarters, Mina pulled out a stereo and began to play some music. Everyone, except Bakugo since he was on his phone with his headphones in, were either dancing, playing games or even socializing with the duo. Eventually, the soreness from their previous exploits began to settle in. After a few hours of hip-hop and electro music, Mina called it a night for the dance party. Everyone bid their goodnights and ventured off to bed, including 𝗵𝗃 and Adrian. Just outside of their rooms, the duo bid each other goodnight with tight hugs and kisses on the cheek before retiring for the night. Tomorrow was another day, and it was going to be a busy one. The next morning, "Okay, scan me," the trader's voice rang in her room. A small, shiny metal ball opened a secret compartment and scanned the girl. The ball was connected to a computer, and an image of the traitor appeared with a comprehensive chart as well as an infrared scan. Scan complete. No quirk detected, the computer deduced. The traitor nodded. Computer, run scan diagnostic with yesterday's snapshot of 2A. Identify known quirks, she commanded. The computer refreshed, popping up an image of the guys trying to move their large couch through the front door. Diagnosis complete. Quirk detection speeds. Optimal. Secure range. 15 meters. Multiple targeting sequence. Optimal. The traitor smiled. Good. Now, scan quirks. Scanning. 6 targets identified. 𝐈𝐴 Kirishima. Quirk, hardening. Katsuki Bakugo. Quirk, explosion. Tenya Ida. Quirk, engine. Yuga Aoyama. Quirk, laser. Izuku Midoriya. The traitor leaned into the monitor. Quirk, unknown. She cursed to herself. And the 6th subject. The computer paused for a moment. Unknown. No quirk detected. The traitor pursed her lips. She sighed as she grabbed her tool bag. Well, so far so good. Let's get you a tune-up. The days following Marinette's and Adrian's arrival to Yua were filled with joy for the duo. Neither were accustomed to living in a dorm before, especially around people they only heard stories about. Their new dorm mates told stories about their most recent adventures, including the recent cultural festival and their joint training simulation just before Christmas. The stories never failed to wow the two miraculous users. And then, after 2 weeks of getting to know each other, school was starting. Everyone was bright-eyed and bushy-tailed by 7 a.m. Well, almost everyone, as Adrian was in his room getting ready. He noticed the severe lack of a Marinette walking out of her room. With his tie half set, the blonde model exited his room to find Marinette's was still dark. He flipped a switch and suppressed a laugh. There she was, the hero of Paris, asleep. Her 2 pillows were thrown all over the place. A mannequin was wearing a lopsided sun hat. 2 rolls of fabric were lying on the floor as well as some papers with measurements of some of the other students. Adrian smiled and blushed as he quietly tiptoed through the room, trying very hard to not step on anything important. When he got to her, he stifled a laugh. She drools in her sleep, he thought. Eventually, he had to get her onto her feet. Hey Mary, he whispered as he nudged her shoulder. She groaned as she lapped her drool. Cat. 5 more minutes, she muttered. No can do bugaboo. You need to get ready, he said. She groaned once more as she flopped away from him. No, yes, Adrian teased. I'm gonna jump on your bed and scream your name unless you wake up. And I can be loud. She rolled over again. This time her loose hair was covering all but the smallest crack of her face. Through the crack, Adrian saw her sapphire eye glaring at him. You're lucky you're cute, she muttered. Adrian smiled. Luck ain't got nothing to do with it, he said. Marinette responded by smacking him upside the head. After several minutes of getting ready and running for a quick shower, Marinette was primed and proper. She tugged at her standard-issued red tie and groaned as she waited at the doors to the dorm. How do you guys deal with this? I feel like my uniform is chalking me, she complained. Adrian shrugged as he walked toward her. Comes with the territory. You get used to it after a while, he said, unless it squeezes the life out of you. Adrian nodded. True. And with that, they were off and toward the main campus. They spotted Mina and Kirishima walking side by side while listening to music on speaker. They were both grooving in place with no care in the world. The sight made Marinette smile as she stole a glance at Adrian. The smile only grew as she sighed in relief. Kitty, you remembered when we revealed ourselves on accident? She asked him out of the blue. Adrian chuckled nervously as his hand went to the back of his head. How can I forget? I still have that bruise from that trash can you used, he commented. The pig-tailed heroine smiled. Good, just making sure you remember, she said. You used what? Marinette turned to see Uraraka behind them. Oh, right. Whoops. Midoriya jogged up to them. Damn, you're fast when you want to be, he commented. The gravity heroine smiled at him. Faster than you? She asked. For now. Adrian coughed. So, you got hit with a trash can. What's the story behind that one? Uraraka asked. The duo blushed lightly. Well, it's like this really several months ago. Miraculous Ladybug. Ladybug bellowed as she tossed her lucky charm up into the air. The magic spell spread throughout Paris and repaired some of the ruined buildings from their fight. The Akuma, calling himself 𝐶𝐵, tore through many of the new high-rises that were either nearly completed or just underway. The scorned construction worker was laid off because he had not reported to his supervisor multiple times regarding his late arrivals. His body was a combination of multiple construction vehicles with a sentient life force behind it all. Thankfully, both Ladybug and Cat Noir were in the area. The Akuma transformed back into his civilian self with the trademark confused look on his face. The dynamic duo fist bumped with wide smiles on their faces. Nice job once again, Bugaboo, Cat said. Ladybug practically beamed at him. That was a great workout, Kitty. Is it kinda sad that our workouts only happen when Paris is falling apart? Well, I don't think we'll be letting ourselves go anytime soon. But I see your point, her partner said. His ring and her earrings started beeping simultaneously. Time to bug out. See you later, 𝗧𝗵𝗲 said as she lassoed a nearby building. Kat was about to do the same and leave, but a young child came by and asked for an autograph from the cat-themed hero. He couldn't help but oblige since the kid beamed with enough energy to somewhat rival 𝗧𝗵𝗲. He signed the paper the kid gave him and used his staff to launch himself into the air, in the same direction as 𝗧𝗵𝗲. As he flew into the air, he saw the back of the spotted heroine closing in fast. He was about to steer himself away, but his staff gave way. A part of the ground where he launched from was unstable thanks to the fight and sent the blonde hero into his partner. 𝗧𝗵𝗲 shrieked as they both tumbled off of the roof of a nearby building and into an alleyway. With Kat on top of her, 𝗧𝗵𝗲's panic overwhelmed her as she felt her transformation begin to wear off. Kat, her partner, locked eyes with her. She quickly covered his eyes with her hand at the second she detransformed. Kat got the message right away and covered her eyes as well while bracing his entire body weight on his free arm. At that moment, he detransformed as well. And there they were. 𝗵𝗲 𝗵𝗃𝗀𝗁 and 𝗵𝗲𝗄 Agrest were in a compromising position with nothing to do but feed their 𝗂𝐴𝐺. See, Kat, you good? Technically no, was his answer. Oh, right. They both stayed silent for several minutes, hoping that their 𝗂𝐴𝐺 were recharging. So, how are you? 𝗵𝗲𝗄 asked. Really? Hey, gotta lighten the mood somehow, he reasoned. Focus, kitty. Thankfully I think we're alone. Otherwise, we'll get it, girl. Alia's voice echoed through the alley. Shit, 𝗵𝗲 thought to herself. Damn, Mary, it's taken all this time but you finally took action. Hey sunshine, you better treat my bestie right. Shit. Alia, their identities. Oh no. Tiki. Wait, you know 𝗧𝗵𝗲's identity. 𝗵𝗲𝗄 called out. Why wait? Damn it. Deciding to throw away the pretense of secret identities, 𝗵𝗲 moved her hand from 𝗵𝗲𝗄's face. 𝗵𝗲. The pig-tailed hero flinched as 𝗵𝗲𝗄 removed his hand from her face. 𝗵𝗲𝗄. Plag face-palmed as he watched. The two heroes continued to stare at each other for several minutes before they both let out ear-piercing screams, scaring the wits out of Alia in the process. The 𝗂𝐴𝐺 of destruction only sighed and said, as he watched 𝗵𝗲 scramble out from underneath her former crush and swing the lid of a metal trash can at him. Well, all things considered, this isn't the worst reveal in our history, he said. Tiki looked at him with a glare. After a few seconds, she shrugged. Well, true, Japan was a nightmare, she said. In the present, 𝗵𝗲 and 𝗵𝗲𝗄 were finishing up the story when they entered the classroom. Bakugo was arguing with the newest addition to the class, Hitoshi 𝗀𝗀. The brainwashing hero in training had moved up to class after 𝗵𝗲's perversion reached new heights, and Ishido, along with several other girls and a few guys, reported his activities to the school. While the decision was being weighed about whether or not he would stay in the same class or even the school, his name was not including on the roster, leaving one spot open. As such, Midoriya breathed a sigh of relief as he entered and saw a different kind of purple hair in the room. Seriously, so it was Alia's fault. 𝗧𝗏 gathered. Hey, well, if she didn't find us, either we would have been found by someone else or we could have transformed back and left, but 𝗵𝗲𝗄 said. It was. I was a bit mad at her for a while after that, 𝗵𝗲𝗄 said. Thankfully she wasn't recording or anything. Yeah, because the last thing we both needed was the tabloids blowing up and my dad bursting a blood vessel or two, 𝗵𝗲𝗄 said as he peered into the room. Well, this is a big room. Yup. Oh yeah, they did it. 𝗵𝗲𝗄 is not in the class anymore, 𝗧𝗏 exclaimed. Ishido, who sat herself toward the front for once, threw her arms into the air. Principal Nezu suspended him while the investigation continues. That perv had it coming. The miraculous duo recoiled at the comments. Yikes, was he that bad? 𝗵𝗲𝗄 asked. Hell yeah. He's been trying to get a look at our goods and making comments all year. He's even touched some of us. You've seen our showers, 𝗵𝗏𝗄. If he was serious, he could have snuck in at any time. Ishido shivered at the thought. A third year now, reported an incident where he was found hiding inside the girls' locker room. It was for the best, before 𝗵𝗲𝗄 could throw in his 2 cents. Bakugo erupted from the other side of the room. Fuck you. The Hibernation X53 is way better than the X60. And I'm telling you that the 60 is more insulated and has a built-in pillow. You're just too basic. 𝗀𝗀 argued back. Asshole doesn't know what he's talking about. Midoriya's eyes were wide. Are they talking about sleeping bags? He asked Ishido. She nodded. It's been like that for a few minutes. You know, at least it's only about sleeping bags, she said. I'm taking the comfort over the pillow anytime. Bakugo continued. 𝗀𝗀 face-palmed. Then, he slowly grew a smile and said the X60 has legs. Bakugo's eyes widened for a brief moment. You're making that up. 𝗀𝗀 shook his head. 𝗧𝗏𝗏 tried to suppress her laughter as they all walked into the room. Taking their seats, they all watched as Snipe entered the room with his holster empty. Unarmed, the pro hero walked in with a small stack of papers in his hand. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, sir. The class responded in unison, startling the miraculous duo. Well, today is going to be a relatively short day for you all. I will be your homeroom teacher for the remainder of the year, and there will be some more rules enforced now that you're all second years. 𝗵𝘃𝗀𝗁, you're required to wear your full uniform to class every day, and that includes your tie, 𝗧𝗵𝗲 said. 𝗵𝘃𝗀𝗁 rolled his eyes before grumbling his usual fine and looking away. And you, 𝗵𝘃𝗀𝗁, see if you can get your tie fixed before coming in as well. This isn't the Wild West, and you need to be more attentive to your clothing, the pro continued. 𝗵𝘃𝗀𝗁 nodded. 𝗧𝗵𝗲 picked up his papers and began to pass them out. Welcome to year 2, everyone. As second-year students, you are one step closer to graduation and becoming heroes yourselves. Of course, unlike last year, I won't be holding your hand through much of the process. This is your first lesson in year 2. He returned to his desk. All of you will be required to complete some tasks throughout the year. One of them is completing training hours. Since most of you have some sort of combat ability, I will be requiring you all to put in some time in the gym and train. The paper says between 12 and 18 hours of training time, so that's what it'll be, he said. 𝐻𝐸𝐽 stood straight in the air. Sir, I don't mean to be abrupt, but some of us have internships and work studies with agencies. How will those fit into our schedules? That's a good question. Well, depending on your work study, you can put in some hours of that into your training time. Be mindful that community service won't necessarily count toward that. Other than that, put in some time for yourselves to grow stronger. Also, we will be holding elections for class representative and vice representative tomorrow. First will be the nominating phase, where you'll all be naming who you'd like to be in the running. That's due tomorrow at this time. Then we'll shorten the list to 3 people, if necessary. If not, then we'll hold the general election to see who takes on what position. Now, 𝗂𝗏, would you like to be considered for re-election, or will you participate in the election process? 𝗧𝗵𝗲 asked. 𝗂𝗏 pondered for a moment. Well, I have been considering this for a while, and I'm unsure. The job is difficult, if I'm being honest, especially with the villain attacks last year. But I do believe that my classmates can do the job just as well or even better than I have done. And so, I think I will decline my re-election bid, he said. There were some sounds of protest from the class. Yes, that is my decision. I have faith that my successor, whoever it may be, can perform the job better than I, he said. 𝗧𝗵𝗲 nodded. Very well. So, it's an open game now. Nominate your classmates and bring their names to class tomorrow. We will vote on there. For now, we are running a little behind schedule, so you'll need these. He pressed a remote button and opened a section of the wall. Everyone's eyes shined bright as their suitcases containing their hero costumes emerged from the wall. 22 suitcases, including Marinette's and Adrian's, caught everyone's attention and curiosity. Everyone will put on your costumes and report to Gym Gamma in 15 minutes. Marinette and Adrian, your update suits are there as well. Marinette's is number 21 and Adrian's is 22. Following your classmates to the changing rooms and be ready to show us what you can do. 𝗧𝗵𝗲 exited the room with a unified chorus of yes sir behind him. When the doors to Gym Gamma opened, 𝗬𝗏𝗲, 𝗧𝗵𝗲, and Mecha-Menace all turned to get a look at Class 2A. They all strode into the room with a confidence that was lacking when they first entered. 𝗬𝗏𝗲 smiled as he turned to his cowboy colleague. You got your work cut out for you, he said. Yeah, but I hope it'll be worth it in the end. These children are our future after all. Behind the initial group, the newcomers entered. 𝗫𝗠𝐸 wore a violet tracksuit with a black vest and utility belt holding it all together, along with his voice modifier situated on his face. He wore Aizawa's wrappings as well as a pair of black, fingerless gloves. Behind him, Marinette and Adrian walked in. Marinette's ladybug suit was modified with pauldrons and large gauntlets on her wrists, both resembling the ladybug style she was used to. The pauldrons were black while the gauntlets were red and spotted. Her suit also came with a jacket and yellow straps crossing her chest. Her boots were more defined and cushioned. Wrapped around her waist was her trusty yo-yo. She wore a wide smile on her face. Adrian's cat noir suit was also different. The whole leather ensemble was redone so it was less skin-tight and more defined. His gloves came with retractable claws and were thin enough for him to still wear his miraculous. Wrapped around his neck was a blue cloth that resembled the scarf he left at home. He had his bow staff strapped on his back as he walked in. With everyone inside, 𝗧𝗵𝗲 continued the class. All right, everyone. Now I know that jumping into combat training isn't your cup of tea, but that's one thing you learn about being a hero. Sometimes the villains will not wait until you're ready. They'll cause trouble at any time they want to, he said. He gestured to the miraculous duo in the back. Do you two agree? They both nodded. We've had to deal with well, villains while we were both in school, while doing homework, and taking a shower. 𝗧𝗵𝗲 nodded. And in that, we will start today. Now, Ms. Hatsum and the rest of the support class have devised a special present for us all. A new way to up your combat training while also freeing up ectoplasm's time. This new program will push you to think tactically in response to an enemy having knowledge and safeguards against your quirks. 𝗧𝗵𝗲 jumped with glee as she pressed a button on her remote, opening the side doors of the building. The whole class watched in awe as a group of beings walked into the gym. Before, our robots were pretty standard issue and not too strong against confident fighters. They had no safeguards against powerful quirks, so we made these. On behalf of the entire support class, the beings stood at attention. Marinette and Adrien exchanged worried glances as human-shaped robots saluted to the class, unaware that the UA traitor was nearby with a sinister grin on her face. I present to you the quirk identification and combat drones. The QICDs were human-like in form, with several features. Their legs were all thicker with more armor than most of the body. Their torsos were leaf-shaped with no distinguishable features besides a small engraving on the top left corner of its chest. The head was in the shape of a crusader's helmet and completely void of any distinguishable features. In fact, each robot was as lifeless and uninteresting as the last, so it baffled the young successor when 𝗧𝗵𝗲 gestured to the robots like a game show presenter showing off a cheap jet ski. Everyone was murmuring among themselves as 𝗧𝗵𝗲 did a little jig. So, this will be your lesson for today. Depending on your progress today, it's possible that this may be how you train throughout the year, 𝗧𝗵𝗲 said. So, here are some guidelines. Before he could say more, 𝗧𝗵𝗲 slid right in front of him. Thanks, cowboy. Anyway, these wonderful beauties are the latest in combat software, combined with the newest software designed to literally read its opponents and their abilities. Some of the class's murmuring continued. That's right. These robots are specially equipped to read its opponent's quirks and establish safeguards against them. This is the next stage in combat training evolution. Far better than fragile clones and lifeless dummies. 𝗳𝗲 threw his hand into the air. Wait a minute. It can stop us from using our quirks. These robots are strong on their own. Each one is specially capable of surveying battlefields and simulate intelligent villains. Each member of the support department were granted access to these robots and the technologies that some of the best technological companies can provide. And no, it's not going to stop you, simply the opposite will occur. These robots will keep you from relying on your quirks however it sees fit, she answered. 𝐭𝐲𝐿 raised her hand. Are they safe? 𝗧𝗵𝗲 snorted. Safe? Yeah, they can pack some mean punches and are fast to react. I hope, since I like 3 or 4 of you guys. I asked for you guys specifically to test them, she admitted. Everyone slumped as she spoke. Great, so we're guinea pigs. So, I need a volunteer. Come on, don't be shy, she called out. Marinette and Adrien gave each other another uneasy glance, and suddenly snapped back into focus as Midoriya walked up with his hand raised up. I'll give it a go, he said. 𝗧𝗵𝗲's smile appeared sinister as she grabbed the successor by the arms and pulled him forward. Perfect. The most improved student gets to be my first casualty. First what? 𝗧𝗵𝗲 snickered. Kidding. Mostly. She pushed him in front of one of the robots. She then grabbed her remote and pressed a few buttons. Okay, Unit 18 will be fighting Izuku Midoriya. I'm only going to have this one active so the others don't gang up on you. She took a couple of steps back and pressed a button. All right, go at it. Midoriya prepared his stance. How hard? He asked. 𝗧𝗵𝗲 smiled. It won't matter. The rest of the class took several steps back while the miraculous duo took a few steps forward. Midoriya powered up full cowling, prompting his robot to respond. Quirk detected. Subject, Izuku Midoriya. Quirk, unknown power enhancement. No suitable power cap detected. The young hero took this as his signal to launch at the robot with incredible speed. While most of the class couldn't keep up with him, the robot was quick. As Midoriya ready to shoot style, the robot responded, activating Stand Your Ground protocol. Raising its arm up and planting its feet in a strong stance, the robot braced itself and blocked the strike. The shoot style, running at 20% after his many months of training, did nothing as pressurized air filled the room, nearly sending everyone to the ground. Marinette and Adrien had braced themselves and barely managed to power through the strike. But their minds flashed back to when he last used that kind of power. One for all. 100%. Yorktown Smash. Marinette still heard stories from people who were present when he defeated Titan 2 years ago. They all remarked at the force of the strike and how his declaration that he wasn't going to let anyone die gave them hope. In their world, Midoriya had become the symbol of peace without needing a license, and that power was stopped by a robot. When the dust settled around them, the students and even 𝗧𝗵𝗲 gasped. The robot was still standing with its arms still raised. The only difference was that 2 long tubes had ejected from its back and stapled into the ground. Large metal clamps also were evident at its feet, securing a strong base against the attack. Force equation analyzed. Secure protocols executed. Base secured. The robot calculated. The crowd wowed at the display. 𝗧𝗵𝗲, who was sent face first into the ground, popped back up with a wide smile on her face. Yes, we did it. Oh, I can't wait to tell the rest of the class that it stopped a Deku. The successor in question dropped to the floor. Whoa, that felt so. Wow, I know, right? Plus, since the system is new, it had no prior knowledge of your abilities. It learns on the spot. The class was impressed. Well, some were. Bakugo pushed through the crowd and stood tall. Give me one of them. You'll be getting a box of nuts and bolts back. 𝗧𝗵 looked at 𝗧𝗵𝗲, who then nodded to her. Funny you should say that. For the rest of the class, your assignment is to somehow incapacitate your 𝐾ICD before it can incapacitate you, he said. The class began to murmur with excitement. Marinette and Adrien watched as the robot retracted its own features and returned to its normal stance and bowed. Psst, Mary, this is how it starts, he said. How it starts? X-Men. There are sentinels that were built to counter mutations. This is the same thing. Marinette looked back at the robot. You know what, you're right. 𝗧𝗵𝗲 waved them all off as they all found a spot to fight their new training buddies. After several minutes, the chaos that ensued was beautiful and terrifying. Explosions, ground pounds, acid and sparkly lasers were being shot in every direction. Aoyama's naval laser was being refracted by his 𝐾ICD's extendable armor. Ashido's acid was slowly eating away at her robot while it was trying to deploy a solution to dampen its effect. And even Sato's sugar rush punches were no match for its thick armor plating. Even 𝐻𝐸𝐽 was having trouble. And for good reason. As soon as the 𝐾ICD identified her by her floating gloves, it conducted a quick 360-degree scan and pulled up constant images of the invisible girl and where she was at all times. When she learned how it found her, well, she wasn't happy. For the first time ever, she was trying to cover up while fighting the peeping robot. Around the gym, Ida and his 𝐾ICD were racing around the building while Midoriya led his robot throughout the room, leaping from concrete structure to concrete structure. The two appeared to be racing, though the reason was understandable. 𝗧𝗵 was talking on the sidelines with 𝗧𝗵𝗲 and 𝗵𝗲𝗧, many variations to counter. That's why there aren't that many personal counters. Most strength-based quirks are being countered with extra armor and something called the Stand Your Ground protocol, which creates a sturdy base with its legs. Acid-based or other consumable liquids aren't easy to counter, but the initial armor can withstand her acid for a while, she said. And explosives? 𝗧𝗵𝗲 asked. 𝗧𝗵 gestured to the class as Bakugo blasted his robot with an explosion. The 𝐾ICD leapt into the air and opened up its chest cavity to reveal a blue canister. It fired a blast of cold air at the explosive hero, nearly freezing him in its tracks. Liquid nitrogen. Honestly, that set us back a while since we needed a safe and efficient way to weaponize it, she admitted. 𝗵𝗲𝗧 looked at her with wide eyes. Liquid nitrogen. That's dangerous. What if it actually hits him? He'll freeze. 𝗧𝗵𝗲 smiled. Relax. When identifying individuals with heat-type quirks, it'll fire close shots and chill the air around the person. Its targeting system is fine-tuned, she said. As they continued to watch the class, 𝗧𝗵𝗲 took momentary glances at the two new students. Marinette and Adrien were back-to-back with their weapons ready as their 𝐾ICDs inched toward them. Well, maybe now we can see what they can do. Can you tell what their quirks do? He asked 𝗧𝗵𝗲. She shrugged. I checked all of them and those two are bona fide quirkless. They don't have any powers, she said. As she said that, Adrien swung his staff at the approaching 𝐾ICD. It was knocked away while Marinette lassoed her robot and swung it around and knocked into the recovering robot that belonged to her partner. They both backed away from them as they rose to their feet. One of the 𝐾ICDs scanned the duo. Unknown individuals detected. No quirks detected, it read aloud. Adrien smiled. We'll see. Cataclysm. Holding up his hand into the air, he felt no surge of energy in his hand like before. Instead, he felt a surge of energy build up in his miraculous. His hand dropped as the buildup weighed on him. Marinette noticed and panicked as the two 𝐾ICDs closed in. Quirk detected. Unknown destructive power. Error. Acting on instinct. Adrien slashed at the legs of one of the robots. It turned as black as onyx and crumbled to the ground. As it did, it unsheathed a hidden blade from its forearm and slashed upward, cutting the other 𝐾ICD. The remaining 𝐾ICD crumbled and turned to dust, leaving two piles of black dust between the two heroes. Adrien dropped to the ground as the two robots were quickly defeated. He looked back at his hand and noticed that the energy was still present. He raised up his other hand to see the same energy converging in the other. He looked up to see Marinette looking at him in awe and shock at the same time. His own awe was replaced with concern when he realized the energy was not disappearing. He tried shaking his hands free of the power, but it persisted. Bugaboo. It's not going away. Marinette dropped her yo-yo and approached him. Maybe try willing it away. Imagine the power fading. As she tried helping her partner out, 𝗧𝗵𝗲 watched the events with her jaw hitting the ground. Well, it's a decay ability. She was flabbergasted. Well, it didn't destroy the robot right away like Tamura Shigaraki. It traveled up its sword and destroyed both at the same time, 𝗵𝗲𝗧 observed. Never mind that. It has a sword now. What quirk does that counter? 𝗧𝗵𝗲 shrugged. It's working pretty well against that ponytail chick over there, she said. On the battlefield, Ieyasu was trading blows with her 𝐒𝐻𝐳. Her staff against its sword created a battle sometimes seen in pirate movies. Of course, she also had the hilt of a sword sticking out of her stomach for when she needed to upgrade. The sword is best used for more close combat fighting while also clearing terrain. It's not to be used to draw blood though. In fact, each robot is specifically programmed to not physically injure a person by shedding blood or causing unnecessary bruising. That's the first law of robotics, 𝗵𝗃 said, and those don't change at all. Right, 𝗧𝗵𝗲 said. Of course, we're not all mad scientists. Some people didn't even work on the project. Something about watching too many robot apocalypse movies or whatever. That made 𝗧𝗵𝗲 feel a little better as he surveyed the scene. On the other side of the room, well hidden from anyone else, the traitor enacted her plan. She held in her hand a remote that had the signal strength of each robot in activation, except for the 2 that were destroyed. She surveyed the battlefield while her finger hovered over her choices. Let's see. Tail, engine, dark shadow, acid, gravity. She continued to watch for her target. While she could easily activate the 𝐒𝐻𝐳 that was chasing Midoriya, she decided to wait until she was ready. Her wandering eyes continued to scan the room until it finally landed on a target. Bakugo was still trying to destroy his robot with his AP autocannon. The 𝐒𝐻𝐳 had created a shield using the excess armor in its arm to protect its sensor from the incoming attacks. The traitor noted that just a few minutes prior to her decision, Bakugo fired an AP shot at the robot's head and came close to damaging its sensor. Since then, the robot's new directive was just to protect itself, until the traitor came up with her genius idea. With his autocannon still firing, the explosive hero slowly closed the distance between them. The traitor smiled as her finger hovered over the button that activated Bakugo's 𝐒𝐻𝐳. As soon as he got close, she pressed the button. Internally, the robot transformed. It dumped its previous programming and installed a new directive. At the same time, Bakugo leapt into the air and readied his howitzer impact. Pulling the air in from around him, he prepared for the blast that would guarantee him victory. At the last moment, the 𝐒𝐻𝐳 dropped its shield and opened up its chest cavity, revealing the liquid nitrogen containers. Bakugo had no time to react as all 4 canisters within fired at once, blasting the explosive hero in near sub-zero temperatures. The blast caught everyone's attention as cold air filled the room. Midoriya and his 𝐒𝐻𝐳 stopped nearby once the explosion occurred. When the fog cleared, Todoroki was the first to see what happened. Bakugo was lying several feet away and as blue as Paul Bunyan's ox, 𝐵𝗃. A half-fire and half-ice hero called out. Kirishima and Ashido both ran to the scene. What the hell happened? You okay, man? Bakugo's glare was the only thing not frozen as it fixed on his best friend. Kirishima quickly apologized and turned toward the 𝐒𝐻𝐳. What the hell, 𝗵𝗃, is this thing busted or something? The tinkering support heroine was busy combing over her portable computer and the remote for an answer. Meanwhile, the 𝐒𝐻𝐳 was given new instructions as it scanned Kirishima. Target, Ijiro Kirishima. Quirk, hardening. Yeah, what about it? He responded. The traitor smiled as she pressed one more button. New orders received, execute all quirks. It pulled in a punch and launched it into Kirishima's stomach. The hardening hero barely had time to harden, but it mattered little when he felt the air in his lungs be expunged. He was lifted off of the ground before collapsing. Mina immediately responded with a ball of acid to the robot's face. The 𝐒𝐻𝐳 launched a small piece of metal to intercept the acid. Once it was dealt with, it backhanded the acid user, sending her to the ground. This got everyone's attention. Shoji and Tokoyami both rushed in first with their quirks ready. Dark Shadow, go for its legs. Got it. As Dark Shadow moved to sweep under the 𝐒𝐻𝐳, the robot turned with its palm raised high. It flashed a bright light at the creature, scaring him and forcing him to run away. Shoji raced forward with a fierce determination in his eyes. OCTOBLOW. His arms multiplied by a dozen, creating more fists ready to beat back the robot. Using its shields, the 𝐒𝐻𝐳 blocked many of the strike while also utilizing its stand your ground protocol. Target identified, Mizo Shoji. Quirk, dupli arms. Notable countermeasure, amputation. Pulling its arms back, the 𝐒𝐻𝐳 unsheathed its blade and swiped at the multi-armed hero. Shoji quickly backed off, nearly getting one of his fists cut off. The robot continued to slash at the hero until it registered another quirk incoming. It retracted its sword and braced itself for Ada's reciprocal burst. The former class representative blasted onto the scene with his leg raised for a strike. The initial impact did make the 𝐒𝐻𝐳 falter slightly, though the momentum passed soon after initial contact. Target, Tenya Ida. Quirk, engine. Notable countermeasure, overheat the engine. The 𝐒𝐻𝐳's chest cavity opened, and instead of revealing the canister for the liquid nitrogen, revealed a flamethrower. It fired a burst of fire at Ida, engulfing his free leg in flames. Were it not for his suit, his leg would have been scorched. The robot knocked Ida away just in time to detect Sato moving in behind it. It unsheathed its blade and moved to thrust the blade upward to skewer the Sugar Rush hero had it not been stopped. Marinette and Adrien were already closing in when they saw what stopped it. The 𝐒𝐻𝐳 struggled as tendrils of black energy kept the robot's arm from following through with its fatal blow. Not too far away, Midoriya stood with a strong base of his own and the same black tendrils that held the robot back coming out of his extended fist. 𝗧𝗨 took advantage of the distraction and landed a solid punch on the robot. Its chest compartment was slammed shut and dented by the hit. The Sugar Rush hero grabbed the door to the chest compartment and opened it up. ASHIDO. The acid user had recovered quickly and fired a hose of acid into its chest cavity, melting the compartments and the flamethrower. The door quickly slammed, dooming the 𝐒𝐻𝐳 to its messy end. It collapsed in on itself and melted in the acid pool Mina had created. Before the head melted, it uttered its last report. Final target identified, Izuku Midoriya. Quirk, strength enhancement. Complication, secondary quirk identified. The head melted before it could say anything else. Nearby, the traitor smiled as she pocketed her remote and slipped away. Test number 1 is complete. Truly a monumental success. Once the robot was dealt with, Midoriya's black whip dropped. He collapsed on the ground with his gloves feeling like hot leather against his skin. Damn it, he muttered. 𝐾𝐻𝐵. The explosive hero was still shivering. 𝗵𝗃, and 𝗵𝗃 all rushed onto the scene just as Yaoyorozu created a heated blanket for Bakugo. Todoroki, I'm gonna need an extra burst of heat, she asked. Got it. The half-and-half hero created a small flame and knelt beside the explosive hero. Kaminari, I'm going to need a good charge to keep the blanket powered. I'm pretty tired and can't make a generator. Already on it, he said as he stuck the power cord into his mouth, making Gyro nearly lose it. Marinette watched the situation unfold as the pro heroes arrived. 𝗧𝗵𝗲 was the first to kneel by Bakugo and remove his poncho. Damn it, talk about a first-day disaster. 𝗬𝗵𝗲. She's already been called. Funny enough, she was already nearby so she'll be a few minutes, he said. 𝗧𝗵𝗲 nodded. All right, the rest of you, this'll wrap up the day. Change and return to your dorm. We'll pick back up tomorrow, he commanded. Everyone was hesitant, but obeyed with the exception of Todoroki, Kaminari, and Yaoyorozu. As the crowd dispersed, Marinette watched as Uraraka ran over to check on Midoriya. He had removed the glove where the black whip came from and showed her the minimal burns on his arm. They talked quietly among themselves before joining the rest of their class. Adrien came up next to her. Bugaboo, let's get going, he said. He saw that she held her gaze on the two heroes leaving. Hey, you okay? Marinette shrugged. I don't know. You saw that, right? What Midoriya did. The blonde model nodded. Couldn't miss it. Looks like he's been hiding that power, he said. Marinette said nothing more on the subject. After checking in on Bakugo's condition and waiting for Recovery Girl to arrive, the miraculous duo followed the rest of the class out. As he changed back into his school uniform, Adrien failed to notice that the green paw on his miraculous began to beep silently. Paris. 2 days before arriving at UA, Marinette and Tiki were up on the balcony underneath a cool spring Parisian night. Her finals were difficult but manageable as she had succeeded in completing her final year of public school and now she needed a break. She had taken to letting her hair flow free with the gentle breeze as the city celebrated another year of heroism from Team Miraculous, an achievement that, unfortunately, came from another year of Akuma attacks. Tiki, her 𝗏𝗏, was relaxing on the top of her head with the remains of a macaroon in her hand. Is everything okay, Marinette? She asked. You're pretty quiet tonight. Marinette sighed. It's just been a long day, she said. Tiki nodded as she tossed the rest of the macaroon into her mouth. Well, she said with her mouth full. It was a successful long day. You defeated 2 Akuma, aced your finals, and had the best movie night ever with your friends. The superheroine nodded. True, and I get to end the day with patrol with Adrien, whenever he decides to show up. The 𝗏𝗏 of creation looked into the night sky. Yeah, he's late, isn't he? And he's normally not. I swear if he's on an anime run again I'll kiss him a couple of times and forgive him. Marinette froze mid-sentence and looked at her 𝗏𝗏. It's not always like that, she said. Tiki shrugged. No, but it happens regardless. Admit it, you're going to forgive him in the drop of a hat, she said. Can we bet on it? A voice asked from behind them. Tiki giggled as Marinette turned to meet her partner's eyes. Adrien Agreste, the renowned cat noir and protector of Paris, held a bow in front of her. He looked up with a sly smile on his face as he mentally called for his transformation to drop. Sorry I'm late, Bugaboo. Nino and some of the guys were throwing an end-of-exam party and Nino needed help cleaning up, he said. Marinette's jaw dropped. Seriously? What? No invitation for your partner in justice? She asked. Adrien shrugged. You were having fun with your friends, weren't you? Well, yeah, but still. The blonde model chuckled as Plagg flew through the trapdoor and into Marinette's room with Tiki in tow. Adrien slowly approached his annoyed partner with a mock pout on his face. Why the long-faced Bugaboo? Did you want to party? he asked. 𝗵𝗃 looked up and thwacked him at the bridge of his nose. Silly kitty. Adrian smiled as hers formed as well. Anyway, I'm kinda beat and I haven't had a decent sleep in a while, the blonde model said. Same, but we have a responsibility. You saw those 𝗂𝐭𝐲 earlier. It's like 𝗂𝐵𝗵𝗲 is upping his game to the point where people are really getting hurt, she said with a sense of urgency in her voice. Sometimes I wonder if the 𝗂𝐵𝗵𝗲 we've met is the 𝗂𝐵𝗵𝗲 we're fighting. Adrian's eyes widened as he dropped his usually cheerful demeanor. Bugaboo, are you saying that it's possible that the old 𝗂𝐵𝗵𝗲 is grooming a new one, and 𝗵𝗃𝗧's future is nearly here? The blonde nodded. 𝗵𝗃 sighed heavily as she turned to stare into the night sky once again. Then we got a lot of work to do. Besides Alex, we need a team, she said. Yeah, too bad Midoriya and 𝗬𝗧𝗏 aren't here, huh? Adrian asked as he joined her at the rails. 𝗵𝗃 smiled. Yeah, man, I almost forgot about those two. You think it's been 2 years for them too? Adrian shrugged. Could be. Who knows? The two continued to reflect for a few moments before Tiki reappeared through the trapdoor. 𝗵𝗃, your phone is ringing, she said. Behind her, 𝗵𝗃 was carrying said phone by its corner. And it's loud. Honestly, why must it wake up the neighborhood? He asked. 𝗵𝗃, what? You were thinking it, he said. 𝗵𝗃 smiled as she grabbed her phone. Hello, 𝗵𝗃. It's 𝗬𝗧𝗏. 𝗵𝗃's eyes widened. 𝗬𝗧𝗏. Oh my god. Adrian perked up as he closed in. Well, how? What? Yeah, I know. It's been a while, huh? Deku and I opened a portal but we're not allowed to cross over. Turns out we can call you though, the gravity heroine said. Hey listen, I don't know what has been happening in your world, but we were wondering if you guys would like to come over. At that point, 𝗵𝗃 had put her on speaker. That sounds awesome, 𝗬𝗧𝗏. Cat noir. Awesome. Oh, I hope we aren't disturbing your guys' patrol or anything. No, it's fine. He looked at 𝗵𝗃, who simply shrugged. We're actually just hanging out for a little bit. I'm feeling lazy and 𝗧𝗏𝗏 likes the night sky too much. Adrian cut in, earning a smile from his heroic partner. Right. Well anyway, what do you guys think? Feel like stopping by for a while. Get to know how the grass grows on this side of the multiverse. 𝗵𝗃 smiled as she heard 𝗬𝗧𝗏 chuckle through that entire line. Midoriya's voice cut in. I told her to say that, by the way. He admitted, and it was a horrible line too. Adrian straightened up. He learned from the best, he said with his chest puffed out. 𝗵𝗃 bit her tongue as she caught herself before she could accidentally reveal his name. She sighed before continuing the call. Cat Noir and I would love to, but we need to get some things straightened out. I imagine that we need cover stories and someone to cover for us just in case 𝗂𝐵𝗵𝗲 gets antsy, she said. True, Adrian said. I imagine the cover stories will be difficult but not impossible. Just give us a few days. Yeah, sure thing. We're just wrapping up our finals anyway, so when you guys are ready, we should be moving into our new dorms, Midoriya said. 𝗵𝗃 smiled. Awesome. Call back in a few days and we should be ready, she said. Perfect. See you soon. 𝗵𝗃 hung up the call and glanced at her partner. So, got any ideas? Adrian asked. The spotted heroine nodded. A few. Let's see if we can pull it off. And if 𝗂𝐵𝗵𝗲 is ready to be an unwilling test subject. When night came the day after their conversation with the heroes from the other dimension, 𝗵𝗃, as 𝗧𝗏𝗏𝗏, swung through the mostly quiet streets of Paris. Her eyesight had improved greatly, to the point where a near-pitch-black street wasn't as obscure to her as before. She waved into the only lit window of a former classmate as she worked on a university application. The spotted heroine continued to speed through the city before arriving at her destination. She landed on the balcony of her best friend's room and knocked on the glass. And there she was, 𝗬𝗧𝗏, the founder of the ever-so-wonderful Lady Blog and aspiring reporter, dancing around in her room with her headphones on. The spotted heroine smiled as she watched her best friend shake it like there was no tomorrow. She knocked on the window with obviously no luck as the music and brand of headphones kept her from hearing the call. She knocked again with no luck. 𝗵𝗃 smiled as she used her lady phone to call her, since she was hooked up to her phone anyway for music. 𝗬𝗏𝗏 stopped her dancing around for a few moments to answer the call. Hello, 𝗬𝗏𝗏s, it's me. Open up? Yeah, one sec. And she hung up and dashed out of her door. 𝗵𝗃 tried very hard to suppress her laughter as she imagined 𝗬𝗏𝗏 running to the door. And 10 in the evening no less, and look around frantically for her best friend. She imagined her thinking it was a ding-dong ditch before realizing what was going on. And sure enough, 𝗬𝗏𝗏 walked back in with a smirk on her face and her hands crossed. She threw open the slider and knocked on her best friend's forehead. Thanks for letting me know which door you were using, she said. 𝗵𝗃 shrugged as she detransformed. Hey, not my fault you don't pay attention. You know, with your slider wide open like that, what if it was Adrian that saw you dancing and not me? 𝗬𝗏𝗏 shivered in disgust. Gross, don't give me that image, Mary. He's a brother to me, she said. 𝗵𝗃 chuckled. True. Anyway, we need to talk, she said. We. The spotted heroine nodded and reached into her purse. She pulled out the round ladybug-esque box. The box was circular with several black spots dotted all over the design. She pressed on the spot that was directly on top, opening a secret compartment where the 𝗵𝘃𝗲 𝗵𝗲 was hiding. Once revealed, glowing orange magic filled the room as a ball containing the 𝗂𝐵𝗲 of illusion came into being. Alia's eyes were as wide as her smile as Trix formed. He smiled once he fully formed. Hello again, Alia. Trix, it's good to see you again, Alia nearly exclaimed for the world to hear. The 𝗂𝐵𝗲 smiled as Marinette gave Alia her miraculous. Put some pants on and transform. We got some work to do, she said. I don't want you meeting with the boys with those shorts. The reporter-to-be rolled her eyes as she followed her instructions. So, what's the 𝗂𝐭𝐴 this time? I didn't get an alert. No 𝗂𝐭𝐴. That surfer guy earlier was enough for 𝗃𝗵𝗲, I think. Anyway, we need to talk to you and Nino, Marinette explained as she looked at her phone. Now dressed properly. Alia called for her transformation and the duo leapt out of the room. As they left, Alia smiled wide as she soared through the air, possibly due to not being used to the freedom that came with the miraculous. She leapt over chimneys with relative ease and passed over her friend's rooftop. The dupe leapt over the street and landed on the rooftop of College Francois Dupont. Alia looked at her friend to confirm that this was their destination. Spotting Adrien and Carapace leaping toward them, Marinette leapt into the school with Alia in tow. The duo were soon met with the rest of the team. Alia and Nino both transformed, leaving Marinette and Adrien in their hero forms. Alright guys, so we've been talking for a while, and while everything still seems hot when it comes to 𝗃𝗵𝗲's miraculous, I think we're making the right choice, Marinette started. Right, now, you both are going to be keeping these miraculous for a little while, Adrien continued, and we will decide if you'll be working with us full-time afterward. Both teens' eyes shimmered. What, really? Marinette flinched and motioned for her friends to tone it down. Yes, but keep your excitement down, she urged. Adrien chuckled. Anyway, this is mainly because of something we're letting you know now. See, Adrien and I have Alia's eyes went wide as she quickly made a next gesture to the duo. Girl, she hissed. It took the spotted heroine a moment before she realized her error. While Adrien began to laugh, Nino was looking between Alia and the cat-themed hero. Wait, why are you? Adrien dropped his transformation as he grabbed his partner's shoulders. Damn it, 𝗵𝘃𝗲, you really dropped the ball there, he said, ignoring the loud intake of air that came out of Nino. Marinette's focus shifted between the three of them for a minute before she buried her face in her hands. Man, sorry, I'm just used to all this. The blonde model went over to hug his partner. He patted the back of Marinette's head as she continued to curse at herself. Alia was laughing while her boyfriend continued to stare at his best friend, who was revealed to being Cat Noir. What, and you knew? He looked at his girlfriend. Alia nodded. By accident. I stumbled on the two of them while they were transformed and, well, I accidentally revealed the both of them to each other, she explained. Nino slumped his shoulders. Well, damn, Mary would flip she knew this. The fox heroine coughed as Marinette finally rose back up. Well, she transformed on the spot and waved at Nino as she did. Nino's jaw dropped as Waze chuckled next to him. Well, now this takes the cake as the best and worst double reveal ever, he said. Tiki nodded. Definitely, she said. Definitely funny as hell, right? Plague asked. Alia smiled as Nino continued to mentally freak out at the sudden reveal. But then, you, and then she. But you, Marinette smiled. So, I'm just going to say this now. Adrien and I were invited by Deku and 𝗵𝘃𝗏 to visit their universe, she said. Nino seemed to snap out of his freak out at the mention of the two heroes. Well, so they were from another universe. Cool is right, but how'll you get there? Alia asked. Can you just hop through dimensions on a whim now? Nope. When they were here, we gave them a magical object called a Janus stone. Basically, it does the job by opening a portal based on the energy it can feel in the air, Marinette explained. For instance, it used their own energies to lock onto and get them home. I think they have a way to reach us, yeah. Marinette nodded. An old smartphone of mine. I gave it to 𝗵𝘃𝗏 so she could contact me. And since it was made in this universe, it's technically a key to us, she said. Talk about thinking ahead. Yeah, but be honest. That was a happy coincidence, Adrien said. Marinette thought about it for a moment and finally nodded and a finger held at her lips. Yeah, but don't tell anybody. People like to think that Ladybug thinks of everything, she said with a smirk. Adrien chuckled and wore a bright smile. A smile that blinded the other duo. Damn, they've been like this for a while, Nino asked. Alia nodded. They're not being a lovely dovey as I thought they would though, she said. The spotted heroine turned her attention to her friends. Anyway, yeah, we will be going away for a while. And while I thought that giving you guys our miraculouses would be a good idea, Adrien started. We actually found a way to make the whole capture and purify the Akuma before it could multiply and let 𝗵𝗃 work without it, 𝗵𝗃 finished as she walked over to a pillar where she used to hang out with her friends. She grabbed an old and familiar backpack and opened it up. She reached in and grabbed an old relic. The genie's lamp, a relic with great magical influence, was revealed. Behold, the genie's lamp. One of, I'd want to say 1,000. Adrien shrugged. Maybe more. 𝗵𝗃 coped his movement before she dropped the bag. Maybe 1,000 magical objects in the world. Master Fu used this before. Well, before he. Her shoulders slumped as her mind wandered. Adrien sighed and walked over to hug his partner and best friend. Sorry. She still blames herself for what happened when Miracle Queen attacked. Honestly, what 𝗵𝗃 did was cruel to all of us, he said. But Chloe revealed all of us, and she was asked to be acumatized and tried to steal all of the miraculouses. Alia argued. Yeah, but none of that would have happened had I trusted her some more. She was a great queen bee and I felt like I was getting through to her. 𝗵𝗃 shook her head. I still hate that I brushed her off like that. Adrien sighed. But anyway. Yeah, the genie's lamp. She did a complete 180, startling everyone around her. This magical object was used by our master, Master Fu, during his fight with 𝗂𝐴𝐺. Now, he said that you can wait, hold up a second. Are you saying that Master Fu, the guy who gave you your miraculous, fought the legendary 𝗂𝐴𝐺, the strongest hero in Greek mythology? Alia exclaimed. 𝗵𝗃 nodded. Turns out he was turned into a god and then he tried to kill Master Fu and take the Janus stone along with a few other magical artifacts. He did say that he's in the realm of dreams, right? Adrien shrugged. I didn't get to meet the guy, so I don't know. Anyway, this thing can trap mostly all magical creatures, so this'll be a decent replacement to my miraculous ladybug. Of course, you guys won't be able to repair the city with magic, so that's something to think about, 𝗵𝗃 said. So don't be riding a magic bull through the city or anything, alright? Adrien asked. Ignoring his comment, 𝗵𝗃 continued. Now, the lamp can capture anything, save for actual people since they're not coded in magic. Master Fu explained it when he got this back from the gods. Inside the lamp is a sort of, I forget, what did he call it? A pocket dimension. Right. The inside of this lamp is an endless pocket dimension. Supposedly, there are no physical barriers or any way of knowing where is where. It's just an endless space, I guess. Her thumb rested on the lever at the base of the lid for a moment. We should all transform. Our 𝗂𝐴𝐺 can be stuck inside if used recklessly. The two novices nodded and called their transformations. Once 𝗵𝗃 and Adrien transformed as well, she opened the lid to reveal a wonderful sight. The inside of the lamp revealed a swirling cloud of pure magic. The four heroes all looked inside to see the multicolored realm inside. It's supposedly endless with purification magic. We tested this earlier with that surfer villain and we trapped the Akuma after we broke the object, 𝗵𝗃 said. We felt like Ghostbusters at that moment. It was awesome and effective, Adrien commented. Alia and Nino exchanged looks. Alright, 𝗵𝗃 sealed the lamp. We leave soon, so you two will be covering for us. Now, I've hidden my miracle box somewhere safe so 𝗂𝗃 doesn't go snooping around and stumble across it. Once we're gone, you guys are the new defenders of Paris. So watch each other's backs, but don't get in each other's way. How we handle each Akuma is go for the main source of the evil, namely the victim themselves. Save who you can, but stop the villain before they cause too much damage, Adrien said. And most importantly, keep the people safe, even if it's not from an Akuma. Patrols help show the people that we're always ready to answer the call for help, so you guys should do the same, 𝗵𝗃 finished. We good? The two novice heroes nodded. Great, now I'm exhausted like hell and I need sleep, the spotted heroine said. We'll see each other tomorrow, yeah. The others agreed as everybody left off in separate directions. But not before 𝗵𝗃 gave Adrien a quick peck on the cheek as a goodnight bid. She lassoed onto the rooftop and made a beeline toward her comfy bed. By morning the next day, both 𝗵𝗃 and Adrien received the call from Midoriya and Uraraka, granting them the all clear. With their cover stories set and their friends ready for their new temporary job, the miraculous duo met their two interdimensional friends and phased through to Yuha High. The day after the incident with the QICDs nearly killing a few members of TUA was truly chaotic. Principal Nezu received a ton of calls from concerned parents and representatives of major tech companies, demanding answers as to why a seemingly harmless experiment turned one student into an angry popsicle and nearly skewered a few others before being shut down. While the parents were ready to pull their children out of the school, the companies warned of retaliation should their names be leaked to the press. Once he was made aware of the situation, the normally fuzzy and cheerful principal was gone. The principal was furious upon learning of the incident and shut down the program that 𝗂𝗨 was supervising. While the support department lost its greatest experiment, only one person benefited from the decision. The traitor of Yuha was still at large, with the whole school unclear as to how and why the QICDs malfunctioned. However, life continued on. 𝗵𝘃𝗲 was as blue as a blueberry popsicle, but his core temperature had returned to normal, after being promised that his natural pigmentation would return. The explosive hero to be had returned to class, and on the day of his return, the class was ready to pick its class representative. Snipe plopped the giant empty box onto his podium. "All right, everyone, this first ballot will decide who will be in the running. I hope none of you voted for yourselves," he said as he shook the box. "Ms. 𝗂𝗵𝗃𝗁, Mr. Agrest, your votes do count despite the both of you being ineligible to run, so I hope you made your choices." The two stood up once their names were mentioned. "Yes, sir," they said in unison as they joined their fellow classmates at the podium to submit their votes. Once the last vote was entered, Snipe grabbed the box and left the room, but not before his announcement. "I will be about 15 minutes, 20 minutes. Feel free to converse among yourselves until I get back. Try not to talk about who you plan on voting, all right?" "Yes, sir." Once the door closed, 𝗵𝗂 groaned. "My parents won't stop calling me," she complained. "Mine too. Word traveled fast after those robots attacked us," Kirishima chimed in. "You have any idea how hard it was to convince my parents that 𝑒𝐻𝐢 is still safe, regardless of those things?" Gyro said. "I'll tell you, it wasn't easy." Takoyami nodded. "It seems that we can never catch a break. From the USJ to these robots. It seems we are a magnet to trouble," he said. Ieyasu nodded. "I think we're all grateful that Sato and Mina managed to stop the robot before it could seriously hurt anybody," she said. "Riolo," Mina said as she leaned back into her chair. "It wouldn't have happened had Midoriya not stopped it." "Right. Seriously, man, you don't stop surprising us. Looks like you got control over that new technique, huh?" Sato said. Marinette leaned in so she could listen better. Midoriya glanced between 𝗵𝘃𝗲 and Uraraka. The gravity heroine looked onto her friend with a small smile. Yeah, well, it's a smaller variant than before, so it wasn't that strong," he said. "Nonsense, man, I can't wait until you use that against a villain. The look on their face will be priceless," Mina exclaimed. The successor smiled. "Yeah, can't wait. Well, regardless of how we handled ourselves yesterday, Hatsume's invention nearly ended our time, and 𝗂𝐻𝐢 needs to be more careful with her projects if we have any hope of being heroes," Ada interjected. "As much as I trust her, I cannot believe Power Loader allowed her QICDs to be brought out for training." Ieyasu rose up. "That's unfair to demonize her based off of a failed design. You saw the look on her face when she saw it was malfunctioning. Plus, the entire support department worked on the project, so it's not her fault," she argued. "To be fair, some people didn't participate," Todoroki muttered. "Hey, regardless, it wasn't her fault. If those robots didn't attack us when they did, I would have put all of my training time on them," the former assistant class rep said. Kirishima grinned. "Same here, I was getting a great workout in with mine. I got some nice scratches into it before 𝗵𝘃𝗲's malfunctioned. And I saw later that there were 2 piles of dust near where you guys were," he said as he gestured to Marinette and Adrien. The blonde model smiled. "Why yeah, looks like my powers are still working in this dimension," he said, "albeit it feels strange this time around." "Is it supposed to be different?" Mina asked. Adrien made a little bit gesture with his fingers. "It's supposed to be a one-time hit and form in my hand, but the power went into both instead, and it had some weight on it," he said. Midoriya turned around in his seat with wide eyes. 𝗵𝘃𝗲 groaned as he knew what was coming up. "No way. So Plag upgraded your power here?" The blonde shrugged. "Strange thing is, I don't feel his presence," he admitted. "Same with Tiki. I nearly hurt myself the other day when I turned off the water at the dorm. Normally I can survive a pretty long fall with little damage, but when I landed after swinging over the roof, I didn't feel as protected," Marinette said. As the inheritor nodded and went into his muttering phase, ☆Shinso turned to join the conversation. "Who are Tiki and Plag? Are they people who help you?" he asked. "Well, how do we answer that bugaboo?" Adrien asked. Marinette shrugged. "We just try to explain it, I guess," she said as she pulled a piece of paper from her bag and began to draw. Well, Tiki and Plag are our. Well, there are 𝗵𝗲, he said. Mina perked up in the conversation. "𝗵𝗲? What's that?" "Well, they're like little fairy-like creatures. See, Marinette and I wear some, what you might call, special jewels. These jewels give us power so we can be heroes in our world. Our 𝗵𝗲 fuse into our jewels to power us up," Adrien explained. Hagakure, at the mention of fairy-like creatures, immediately rushed over. Really? That's so cute." Adrien leapt back in his seat at the sudden action, earning a gaze from his partner in justice. Well, yeah, I guess so." As Hagakure stepped back a little bit, Adrien continued. "Anyway, our 𝗵𝗲 have 2 different powers. Marinette's is creation and mine is destruction," he explained. Interesting. My quirk is creation as well," Ieyasu said. Marinette smiled. "I know. Midoriya and Uraraka have told us a lot about you guys. I hear you can create whatever you want, right?" The everything hero nodded. Well, as long as I know its atomic structure and how it's supposed to be created. Beyond that, I can't create giant things otherwise I wear myself out, she said. Same with all of us, Kirishima said. I can only stay hard for so long. I only have so much strength when I eat sugar, Sato continued. And I constantly have to worry about my acid burning through my clothes and other people, so there's that, Mina chimed in. Yikes, Adrian said. Yeah, our powers are sort of the same. I can destroy whatever I touch, and I create whatever I need to win a fight. Though sometimes my lucky charm will just send me a message. At that moment, a loud clang interrupted their conversation. Adrian looked over and chuckled. Bugaboo, I think your lucky charm still works, he said. The pig-tailed heroine looked over to see a steel plate on the floor. What the? Whoops, I guess I shouldn't use my power's name like that while I'm wearing my yo-yo, she said. Yaoyorozu looked over to see the lucky charm. It was a small steel plate, normally seen in conversion kits for beds, coated in red with black spots. Does that happen a lot? She asked. Marinette chuckled. It hasn't before, though I haven't been as careless about it like just now, she admitted. Though why would it be a steel plate? Adrian shrugged. Maybe you'll use it later. As he said that, the steel plate turned into red dust and disappeared, leaving no evidence of it ever existing. Never mind. As Yaoyorozu turned to go back to her seat, the door opened once again and Snipe re-entered the room. Everyone greeted him as he set the box on his podium. On top of it was a stack of small index cards and a bag of markers. All right, everyone, so the qualifying round has ended, and most of you got at least one vote, he said. Well, to be fair, you didn't say we couldn't vote for ourselves, Ashido said. Snipe coughed at her comment. Well, I guess you're right. Well, in any case, there are 3 people that got more than 2 votes. Beitenya Ida, Momo Yaoyorozu and Izuku Midoriya rise, he said. The 3 nominees all turned to each other before following his instruction. All right, now, the 3 of you are in the running for class representative. Ada, it is possible that you will be receiving a second term, so bear that in mind. The engine hero nodded. All right, now, everyone except for these 3 will be given an index card and a marker. On it, the 3 names are already printed, so your job is to just fill in the selection you'd want as rep. The individual with the second highest will be the vice representative. The one in third. Well, you made it this far, right? Some students chuckled. Now, I understand that last year, Izuku Midoriya was the elected class rep until he stepped down and named Ida as his successor. Well, this is a familiar situation for you then, isn't it? Unlike last year, Midoriya wore a confident face. Yes, sir. Good. Aizawa told me about that little incident, and seeing you standing strong is a definite improvement from last year. But do not let that decide your vote. Remember, between the 3, who is going to be your class rep? Think carefully, as they will remain in this position until the year ends. Or they step down. Are we all ready to proceed? Yes, sir, came the chorus from the class. As the nominees sat back down, Snipe passed out the ballots. Take about 5 minutes, 10 minutes to make your decision. Any longer than that, then I'd suggest you go into a career in politics, the cowboy hero quipped as he handed out the last of the cards. And then they began their vote. On the other side of the school, the Yua trader was humming quietly as she began to put the finishing touches onto her QICDs. A wide smile on her face was evident that she was enjoying what was about to happen. While she was installing the new and improved head onto the robot, she had her laptop open and playing a clip of the Yua entrance exam from the prior year. A camera drone had recorded Midoriya's first smash against the giant 0-point robot. As the clip played, she paused and played back the moment his remarkable power connected with the robot. The playbacks were in slow motion as well, helping the trader get what she needed for her plan to work. Satisfied with her upgrade, the trader leapt from her spot and pressed a button to activate the QICD. Unit number 855, scan me. The QICD did a small nod before speaking. Scan confirmed. No quirk detected. All right, now scan the ceiling, she commanded. The robot peered up and waited a moment before speaking. Scan confirmed. 3 subjects identified. Various quirks identified. 2 combat and reptilian nature quirks identified. Suggesting extermination, the QICD requested. The trader shook her head. Sorry, big guy, but you're not ready. But that doesn't mean you can't dream of some scenarios in which you succeed, the trader said. The robot nodded. Dreaming in progress. Do not disturb, it said. The trader smiled. Good. And she went right back to work. After several minutes, the voting had ended. Snipe collected each and every single ballot and approached the door. This won't take long. Best of luck to the 3 of you, the cowboy hero said before he left the room. Midoriya breathed a sigh of relief as he leaned back in his seat. I can't believe I'm on the ballot, he said. And I can't believe I wasn't on it. Bakugo retorted. Midoriya shrugged. Maybe next year. The explosive hero turned in his seat with a cold, deadly glare. Say that again, I dare you. The inheritor gulped nervously as he waved off his comment. Marinette finished her drawing and walked over to Mina's desk where she showed her the drawing. The images of Tiki and Plag were drawn very well and labeled for identification. "Oh, they're so cute," she gushed over the drawing before handing it to 𝐒𝐻𝐽𝐾. "You don't have pictures of them?" 𝗵𝗏 shook her head. "They can't be photographed. They won't show up on a camera feed either, so that's a bonus on scouting missions," she said. 𝗂𝗧𝗏𝗃 smiled as she saw her two friends gush over the drawing. "How are they doing, by the way? I haven't seen them since you guys arrived." "They're doing great, actually. Since we revealed, they've been spending some time together. Most of the time we're all at my place since my parents like Adrian so much," she said. 𝗂𝗧𝗏's head tilted. That reminds me, you and Adrian seem to be very— I don't know." Adrian smiled as he listened on the conversation, however he could anyway. "Well, not as lovey-dovey." "Well, there's kinda reason for that." 𝗵𝗏 finished her thought. "She's right," Adrian chimed in. "Since we know our identities, it was like getting to know different versions of us. Besides the fact that going public may be dangerous, we still don't know a lot about ourselves." "Right. Last thing we need is 𝗂𝗵𝗲 using our relationship against us. So until we take him down, it's best to not let Paris know about us," 𝗵𝗏 said. "Yikes," Mina commented. "Sounds rough." 𝗵𝗏 nodded. "You've no idea." After a few more moments, 𝗧𝗵𝗏 re-entered the classroom. "May the candidates rise so the official result be read," he said. The 3 candidates rose up. The vote was a success. Many of you have, even without thinking about it, have participated in the political process. As heroes, you have a duty to protect the people while also safeguarding the ideals that keep us free and safe. With these results, you will be represented by 2 of the 3 candidates here. That means you must heed their advice as they listen to yours as well. From class groups to social and political groups, cooperation is key, the cowboy hero said. 𝗵𝗏 smiled as her gaze caught Midoriya's wandering glance. He originally met 𝗂𝗧𝗏's gaze and held it for a few seconds before wandering, prompting the smile from the spotted heroine. "And now, the votes. I had to recount them since they were close, and I believe that it is accurate." The whole class leaned forward as 𝗧𝗵𝗏 plucked an index card from his hat. "And so, your new class representative is?" "If he says coming up after the break, I'll throw something," Adrian thought. 𝗧𝗵𝗏 looked up at his students. "Momoge Urazu." The ponytailed girl flinched at her name and she blinked rapidly. She gestured to herself with uncertainty. "Wait, I won." 𝗧𝗵𝗏 nodded while a wide grin formed Midoriya's face. "Congratulations, Urazu." He half cheered. Even Ida smiled and readjusted his glasses. "A worthy successor. I know you will bring greatness to yourself and the class." The class cheered at the results. Reality finally set in for the everything hero as she smiled and bowed to her teacher. "Thank you all. I hope to live up to your expectations." 𝗧𝗵𝗏 tapped lightly on his desk. "I know you will. As such, your deputy class rep has also been chosen. Coming in close to second is Izuku Midoriya," he said. 𝗂𝗧𝗏 smiled. "It's a reverse of last year's result," she deduced. Midoriya smiled as well. "Why, yeah. And I'm thankful that I didn't get it this time," he admitted. Ida nodded. "It was truly an honor to be your class representative. Despite the trouble we were all finding ourselves in, we overcame many great obstacles as a united family. Urazu, Midoriya, I hope you two have an excellent term." He smiled as he turned and bowed toward the duo. The class clapped and cheered at his brief speech. 𝗧𝗵𝗏 called the duo up to the front of the class so they could be formally introduced to the class. After a few moments, 𝗧𝗵𝗏 assigned them some time at one of the training grounds and prepared their new day. Later that night, in a warehouse just off of the main building, 2 humanoid shadows grew along the doorway. In front of them, the storage depot that housed many of the support department's broken or decommissioned projects laid unprotected save for a simple biometric scanner on the side of the dual iron doors. One of the shadows raised its arm up and produced a large, sharp blade. With a fluid motion, the shadow slashed at the scanner. Destroyed, the scanner malfunctioned and unlocked the door. The doors burst open as the 2 shadows stepped forward. The QICDs that cast the shadows parted from each other as the Trader of 𝐸𝐸 stepped inside the warehouse. She wore a black hooded cloak and a mask in the shape of a cog with 2 wrenches crossing over the face. She stepped inside with a wide smile on the small, exposed portion of her mask. "Units 513 and 514. Search and retrieve. Activate any units you pass along the way," she ordered. The 2 QICDs saluted before marching into the warehouse, unaware of the silent alarm that had triggered the moment the scanner went offline. 𝗧𝗵𝗏, Mr. Aizawa, and Midnight had all answered the call as soon as it came through. If it was a student out of bed or someone putting graffiti on the walls, then it wouldn't be that big of a deal. But when a warehouse is broken into, the gloves come off. They burst out of their dorms and raced to the scene with their equipment thrown on, leaving them in their pajamas and Midnight in her more conservative robe. "What the hell is happening?" Midnight demanded as they ran. "I was just getting comfortable." Alarms going off at the support class's warehouse. "This can't be good," 𝗧𝗵𝗏 commented. "That's where those damn robots are being stored." Aizawa's eyes widened. "Your class was involved." The cowboy nodded. The Erasure hero scoffed before turning back to the school. Of course, that sounds like them. But this is insane. That warehouse is supposed to be a secret to the entire support class, Midnight said as she readied her whip. Obviously someone spilled, 𝗧𝗵𝗲 commented. They arrived to the warehouse to a theft in progress. The traitor of UA stood at the door and watched as more QICDs were being activated inside. Her black cloak covered most of her defining assets, leaving her with just a voice and a mask. Hurry up, just take what we need, she called out, sensing that their approach had not alerted her. Mr. Aizawa pressed a finger to his lips as he moved in with his bandages in hand, as Midnight and 𝗧𝗵𝗲 both took flanking positions. The Erasure hero launched his bandages out to restrain the traitor. Of course, it would have worked too had a QICD not intercepted the attack. It allowed itself to be wrapped up and stood its ground against Aizawa's sudden jerk toward himself. Perimeter breached. Shoda Aizawa, the Erasure hero, it called out. Aizawa grimaced as the traitor turned to meet his wide eyes. How the traitor could see through the mask was unknown, but she smiled nonetheless as the QICD kept itself from failing. Ah, the great Erasure hero. Hello, Mr. Aizawa. It's been a while, hasn't it? The Erasure hero grunted as he attempted to retract his binding cloth with no avail. Oh, don't bother. Each and every one of my QICDs are equipped with the stand your ground protocol that keeps them anchored to the ground. Not even Izuku Midoriya could knock one down. 𝗧𝗵𝗲 stepped quietly behind a tree. He spotted Midnight doing the same just opposite of his position, raising a finger to the base of his mask. The cowboy hero carefully raised his pistol at the villain. But of course, it's not like you are here alone. Unit number 87, who else is here? The traitor called out. 2 subjects identified. 𝗵𝗃𝗧𝗵𝗲, codename Midnight. The hero known as 𝗧𝗵𝗲 is also within the perimeter. A robotic voice rang out from inside the warehouse. The traitor turned to where 𝗧𝗵𝗲 was and found herself staring down the barrel of his custom pistol. Surrender. We don't want a mess here, he said. The traitor raised her hands up. Well, that won't be a problem here. Aizawa had cut the bandages that were tangled in the QICD and slowly approached the villain. Why are you here? Can't you see that trespassing is forbidden and impossible? He stated. The villain turned to the Erasure hero, who said, I'm trespassing. Aizawa hesitated. Wah, you're a student. The villain nodded. And I only want one thing from you. It's a small price to pay for my disappearance, but I'd say it's worth it, she said. 𝗧𝗵𝗲 kept his pistol level to the villain. And that is, underneath her mask, the traitor smiled. I want one of your students. It's a fair exchange, I'd say. If the public found out about my QICDs attacking your students, trust in UA would disappear completely. My silence for Izuku Midoriya. Despite his cool demeanor, Aizawa panicked internally. She wants Midoriya. Great, assassins, villains and now robot overlords want him. As 𝗧𝗵𝗲 closed in to apprehend her, one of the walls of the warehouse exploded to reveal 2 active QICDs with their weapons drawn. One of them had a small grenade launcher on its forearm, while another had its signature blade. 𝗧𝗵𝗲 leapt backward as the robots took aim at the hero. The explosion knocked the traitor down to the ground. And before she could be captured, another QICD interrupted Midnight's advancement. Units 513, 514 and 830 apprehend the pro-heroes. Don't let them get away. The robots all beeped in response. The grenade QICD fired a round at 𝗧𝗵𝗲's feet, prompting the hero to fall back. As he moved, the bladed robot leapt forward and attempted to slash at the hero. Aizawa launched his wrappings at the villain. She ducked out of the way and allowed another QICD to become entangled in it. Unit 580 engaged Shoda Aizawa. Acknowledged. The Erasure hero backed away as the QICD bared its mechanical knuckles at him. Neutralize all hostile forces, the traitor commanded before turning on her heel and taking off through the thick array of trees behind the school. Midnight yanked her robe off, causing Aizawa and 𝗧𝗵𝗲 to look away, and willed her quirk to activate. The air turned pink with the mist emitting from her body, and before she could stop the villain from escaping, the sound of a vacuum tore through the air. The 18 hero watched as her mist changed direction and into the spinning arms of one of the QICDs. The mist was absorbed into the robot's body, rendering her useless at long range. Analysis commencing. Somnambulist positively identified. Initiating capture protocols, it said. Midnight grimaced as she retied her robe and lashed out with her whip. The QICD raised its arm to be wrapped in the leather-based weapon and yanked her toward it. Meanwhile, Aizawa glanced back over to see her in combat. 𝗧𝗵𝗲, it's all right now. She's good, he said. The cowboy hero sighed as he pistol-whipped a robot that came too close. I swear I'll never get used to her, he said. Aizawa nodded as he used his knife to slash at the crook of a robot's neck. You and me both. You should have seen her in her first outfit when we were in school, he said. I kinda don't want to, was 𝗧𝗵𝗲's response. Thanks to a piece of tech that she nabbed from the warehouse, the traitor managed to speed up her getaway from the fighting and find a place to lie low. She settled near the main building and in a little nest she had made prior to her impromptu heist. Once she was nestled into her nest, the traitor reached into her cloak and pulled out a smart tablet. Turning it on, the traitor was greeted to live feeds from her active QICDs in the middle of the fight. So far, only 5 units were active with enough slots on her tablet to view up to 15 more. An incredible number considering how many had remained from the training fiasco earlier that week. Tapping on the remaining slots, she commanded them all to activate. She pressed on the side button on her tablet, revealing a small microphone and establishing a connection to one of the units. Unit number 417 and number 98. Initiate stealth protocols and return to base. All remaining units, hunt down and capture the primary target. I want him unharmed, she commanded. All of the units sent a signal, showing that they obeyed. The traitor removed her mask to watch the chaos unhindered. At the 2 dorms, some of the class had woken up to the sound of Snipe quickly dashing down the stairs and out the door. While some of the class convened at the main lobby, Marinette and Adrien were both on the 3rd level and looking out one of the windows at the end of the hall. They had a view of Snipe joining 2 other heroes as they dashed toward the main campus. They watched for a few minutes before they saw the explosion that started the fight. They watched in horror as more explosions could be seen in the distance. "Bugaboo, I'm not liking this," he said. Marinette nodded in agreement. "Looks like we picked a bad time to vacation, eh, kitty?" "Well, at least we can say that we weren't lounging on a beach all day and night," Adrien commented as he played with his miraculous. Marinette smirked. "You could use a tan," she said. Adrien chuckled as they continued to watch the forest separating them from the main campus. Marinette's cheerful demeanor quickly changed to a serious and very heroic one as she continued to survey the area. "Adrien, something's not right here. I get the feeling that there's something big coming," she said. "Big like?" she gasped as the scene changed in front of her. The trees were blowing wildly and she saw a few silver flashes pass through the forest. She quickly ran into her room and grabbed her new gauntlets as well as her yo-yo. "Adrien, we need to get down there." "Got it, Cataclysm." He slashed at the wall, tearing a nice hole in the wall and window. As he ran to get his stuff, Marinette used her yo-yo to lasso the light poles and leap toward the ground. Inside the main lobby, Midoriya and 𝗂𝗧𝗏 both saw her land with Adrien behind her. "They'll need help," the gravity heroine called out. Some of her classmates turned toward her and were already prepared to join in the fight. With his Air Force gloves on, Midoriya burst through the double doors with his friends in tow. Only a few got out before the alarms inside began to blare. It was only him, 𝗂𝗧𝗏, Ashido, and Yaoyorozu that managed to slip out before the doors sealed themselves shut. Once outside, they saw them. A group of QICDs were charging into their field of view with their blades drawn. Adrien had charged in and blocked an overhead strike from one of the robots encountered at its head. Marinette used her yo-yo and natural agility to pull herself into the air and lasso another one of the mech's blade and used it to skewer another. Yaoyorozu created a set of 2 metal bow staffs for 𝗂𝗧𝗏 and Ashido before joining in the fight with a halberd spear. "Watch our spaces." Midoriya leapt into the fight with a shoot-style kick to one of the robots. It blocked with ease before raising an uppercut and a counter-attack, making contact with the inheritor. The QICD managed to knock him back before being skewered by Yaoyorozu. "Midoriya, you alright?" she called out. He only nodded as he slowly got to his feet. He dodged a wing from one of the mechs and tackled it, knocking it to the ground. Marinette and Adrien were back-to-back with their mechs closing in. "Ready?" she asked. Adrien nodded. "Go, Cataclysm." Marinette lassoed her QICD and pulled it toward her. The dynamic duo switched positions and Adrien pushed his power through the mech, turning it to dust before it could land behind him. In front of her, the remaining robot was keeping his distance. "Unusual weapon detected. Suggest disarming all hostiles," it said before it produced its blade and slashed at the heroine. Marinette barely managed to dodge the attack that would have killed her. She dropped low and launched her yo-yo at its legs before pulling them out from under it. She quickly moved in and grabbed its bladed arm and used it to skewer the robot, shutting it down before it could get back up. She nearly rose to her feet before Midoriya yelled out "Duck," and a QICD flew over her head. On the other side of the campus, the traitor growled as she watched the live feed. Pressing on the microphone, she barked an order. "All remaining units, merge." The remaining robots all stopped their attack. The group of heroes watched as 2 of the mechs opened half of their bodies and merged with each other. 4 legs were merged into 2. 2 torsos merged into one big one. And as the mech grew taller, the group knew what they had gotten themselves into. The merged QICD towered over the heroes. While most of the group all backed away from it, Midoriya stood his ground with full cowl still active. He watched more of the monstrous mechs begin to form behind it and smiled. "Ashido, Adrien, we need to break the ground they're on. 𝗂𝗧𝗏, Marinette, get the guillotine ready. Yaoyorozu, we'll need your cannon just in case." Marinette smiled as they all rang in a got it. Simultaneously, Midoriya leapt at the 𝐒𝐭𝐽𝐶D and caused it to smash the ground where he landed. Mina and Adrien both smiled as the acid-throwing hero went first. With her boots on, she slid over the ground with her acid, and while Midoriya kept it distracted, she slid laps around the mech, creating an abundance of acid. She leapt away as Marinette lassoed Midoriya and pulled him away from the giant mech. He and Uraraka high-fived and effectively made him weightless. With the advantage, the Bluenet launched him straight into the air with incredible speed. The gravity heroine smiled as she removed Marinette's weight and sent her up as well. The Bluenet lassoed Midoriya and swung him around several times before launching him back to Earth at breakneck speed. At this point, Uraraka released her quirk, Joint Special Move. In an axe kick, Midoriya brought his full power down at the crook of the mech's neck. Miraculous Guillotine. The mech slammed into the ground as Adrien leapt into the air and slammed his fist into the ground. Cataclysm. The ground underneath the mech crumbled, creating a large hole in the walkway. The acid that had formed before sank into the crater, making an effective pool in the ground and melting the 𝐒𝐭𝐽𝐶D before it could do anything. Midoriya and Marinette smiled. Rinse and repeat, he called out. He and the Bluenet leapt over the acidic pool and engaged the remaining 𝐒𝐭𝐽𝐶Ds. Back in her hiding spot, the traitor watched the live feed with horror. Her grip on the tablet threatened to crack the screen as she felt her hard work falter where it was supposed to succeed. Attention all units, do something. She watched the feed of Yaoyorozu firing her cannon at a unit's optical sensor, blinding its scanner. The 𝐒𝐭�𝐶D registered as being knocked around for several more moments before the link was severed. Another feed showed a yo-yo pull the legs out of another of her units and pull it into the pool. The traitor sighed as she dropped her tablet. As she did, however, the display changed to a black screen as a call started coming in. She quickly fixed her appearance before accepting the call. Hello. The display revealed the cracked face of Tamura Shigaraki. Well, the traitor saluted. As sir, the experiment continues. I've managed to nab some wonderful data on I don't care about your damn experiment. I only want the kid and everything there is to know about him. Shigaraki growled. Need I remind you that you're treading on thin ice, and should you prove to be nothing more than a liability, well, you won't feel a thing when I find you. The traitor gulped audibly. Now, the boy. What is there to know about Izuku Midoriya? The traitor pulled up her notes. Sir, I'm afraid that accessing the medical records are, well, impossible. The school has its own server and KK keeps all students' medical records sealed behind heavy-duty encryption. I am afraid that I can't break it, she said. Shigaraki's cold glare only worsened. That's not the information I wanted to hear. Wait, I have something. The villain on the tablet said nothing as the traitor continued. I have something. See, when you sent me to investigate the subject, he only had a strength enhancement quirk that made him a formidable opponent. But my 𝐒𝐭�𝐶Ds managed to capture something else, she explained as she pulled up the footage from the training simulation. Shigaraki watched the perspective of the mini-brawl that the rogue 𝐒𝐭�𝐶D instigated. The Decay villain watched as the robot moved to deliver a fatal strike against one of the students when it was stopped by tendrils of black energy. The footage turned to reveal that the energy was coming out of Midoriya, and he was straining to hold the robot back. The footage continued to repeat, earning a rare and terrifying smile from the Decay villain. This is sufficient. 2 special quirks, I'm curious as to what'll come next, he said. The traitor smiled. Thank you, Commander, she said. From what I was able to gather, this incident happened before during a training simulation between 2 classes. Midoriya's black thing went crazy and nearly destroyed the training grounds. He used it a few more times, even used it to help defeat a villain after Christmas. Shigaraki fixed his cold gaze back on the traitor. Know this, you got lucky. I will be expecting more from you later. The feed cut right afterward. The traitor sighed before returning her attention to her 𝐒𝐭�𝐶Ds. There was only one left and it was losing. The giant 𝐒𝐭�𝐶D knocked Adrien and Marinette away while Ashido ran in with globs of acid in her hands. Take this, she bellowed as she lobbed the globs at the mech. The robot expelled its chest piece and intercepted the globs. The large sheet of metal fell to the ground as the acid-throwing hero continued to lob more attacks, only for them to be negated by the 𝐒𝐭�𝐶D's efforts. While she was attacking it with her acid, Yaoyorozu was loading the last of her ammunition into the cannon. The soft rounds were slamming the robot with a goopy substance, keeping it from advancing too close to her and her friends. With the last few rounds in hand, she strained to fix her gaze on the robot. She sighed as she moved her cannon closer to her target. Marinette groaned nearby as she picked herself from the most recent attack. Adrien was already back on his feet and with his staff at the ready. Bugaboo, you all right? She nodded. This one is putting up one hell of a fight, isn't it? Yeah, and all the other ones weren't too much trouble either, the blonde said. The Bluenet gripped her yo-yo and threw it into the air. Lucky charm. The yo-yo shined a bright shade of pink before quickly dying. No object spawned from nowhere. leaving her and those who were familiar to the power confused. The final 𝗂𝐈𝐶D noticed the technique and drew its arm blades. Uraraka urged Midoriya and 𝐻𝐸𝐸 to back up with her staff. The robot was getting closer and 𝐻𝐸𝐸's acid globs weren't working on it. She searched the surrounding area for any hope of a plan. She saw that they were a safe distance from the acid pool and need a strong nudge of encouragement if it were to even get close to it. She looked back at Yaoyorozu's cannon and noticed that it was loaded with something red. She smiled. "Deku, get behind it. Mina, we need to shake its balance," she said. Midoriya did a quick scan of the area. One glance at the cannon behind them gave him a reason to smile. Uraraka, great idea. He charged full cowl and was ready to make a break for it. The 𝗂𝐈𝐶D noted the change. Increased distance from hazard zone. Engage short-range enemies. It raised its blades and moved in. Midoriya sped off past the robot. Since he was the primary target, the robot tried to follow his movements and ignored the tree in front of it. 𝐻𝐸𝐸 and Uraraka dove out of the way as Yaoyorozu fired her cannon, expecting the same gook she was firing before. Instead, a large and red boxing glove connected with a large scissor mechanism coming out of it. The red glove was covered with black spots, earning a loud laugh from Adrien behind them. "That's awesome." The everything hero looked on in awe. She checked her hands as the glove connected with the robot and knocking it back. Did I make that? Oh, wait. She turned to see Marinette looking stunned and relieved. Yaoyorozu smiled as she pieced it together. It's her power. Instead of just creating an object, she created an object that worked perfectly. The attack staggered the 𝗂𝐈𝐶D. Uraraka and 𝐻𝐸𝐸, armed with weapons created by their classmate, charged in and repeatedly slammed into it, driving it further backwards. Yaoyorozu continued to advance with her cannon, retracting and firing the boxing glove gag from her cannon with no cost to her lipid count. Midoriya arrived behind the robot and on the other side of the acid pool. He watched the plan unfold and prepared himself. Remember Izuku. Focus and keep a clear head. Do it subconsciously. Once it was close enough, Midoriya dug into the ground, solidifying his base. He shot his arms out, firing tendrils of black energy at the 𝗂𝐈𝐶D. With full cowl active, he latched onto the robot and pulled with all of his strength. The robot identified the situation and braced itself, activating Stand Your Ground protocol. Its legs opened and its anchor plates slammed into the ground, keeping Midoriya from pulling it in. At that moment, Adrien leapt into the battle. Cataclysm. He landed in front of the robot and slashed at its legs, now turned to dust. The 𝗂𝐈𝐶D's base was shattered and it flew into the air and into the acidic pool, splashing some acid into the air but thankfully not hitting anybody. The traitor screamed. No. The group all cheered as the final titanic 𝗂𝐈𝐶D began to melt into the pool. Midoriya smiled as he checked his arms after using his black whip. His arms were raw and steaming, but he didn't feel the same amount of pain like before. He leapt over the robot and landed with his friends. Elsewhere, the traitor of Yua watched the playback of the move that ended her assault. The blonde hero and his partner were both wrenches in her well-oiled machine. She tapped on her tablet, searching for any information about their identities. She groaned as her search produced no result. She sighed as she pondered her next move carefully. She saw that her remaining 𝗂𝐈𝐶D was still functional, despite being melted in 𝐻𝐸𝐸's quirk. She thought for a moment until finally, a new idea popped into her head. She reached over to grab her mask and put it on. Computer, establish a live audio and visual link with Super Unit number 15. Activate voice modifier and scramble outgoing signal, she commanded. The tablet beeped in response. A microphone popped out and a live link was secured. When the pros arrived, they were just in time to see the hologram appear from the ground. The young heroes were stunned to see the face of a giant gear with two wrenches crossing in front of it. So, you actually did it. Snipe raised his pistol before he was stopped by Aizawa. Wait, he urged. The hologram continued. I must admit, I would have been surprised if I actually succeeded. These units were experimental, to say the least. But hey, the merging worked quite well. The quirk identification system needs some more work and a faster processor needs to be implemented. But hey, failure is progress, she said. Aizawa stepped forward. Who are you? He demanded. The hologram did not turn toward him. No one special, Aizawa. I am a completely normal person with no redeeming qualities. Marinette and Adrien shared a look. Now then, I hope you all enjoyed the second version of my 𝗂𝐈𝐶D project. Honestly, it was very difficult to sneak these tweaks into the final design. But hey, working in the lab has its advantages. I certainly enjoy it more than the hero classes, who simply flaunt their quirks and feed into their delusions that they'll be the next All Might in the future. Honestly, you and your quirk dependency is laughable. The brunette's eyes widened. She sounds like an Akuma. But I digress. Those two new students of yours are getting on my nerves, especially those other kids who take a liking to them. Izuku Midoriya, you continue to surprise me with every passing day and I have a feeling that when all is said and done, you will still find a way to catch me off guard, she continued. Ooh, thanks, I am the Tinkerer. It's not an original name nor is it clever, but it is not every child's wish to come up with a villain name, am I right? The group said nothing, prompting the Tinkerer to continue. Now, you all have something that I want. And I have a lot of QICDs and security drones ready for my orders. I can sack the school with the same security drones that protect it, and there is nothing that you can do. Midoriya clenched his fists, earning a surprised look from 𝗂𝗧𝗏. Unfortunately, I'm out of time. But know this, you may have destroyed a good chunk of my forces, but I am far from done with all of you. I have more QICDs in production and ready to play their part in the end of superhero society. And there is nothing you can do about it. Nothing. The video quality began to fade. Next time, my match will give you a reason to cry and run home to mommy and daddy. The age of superheroes is over. Now is the age of super steel. And my QICDs will seriously pack a meaner punch than what you're comfortable with. Sleep on that. Heroes. The acid pool swallowed the remaining QICD, destroying the projector that was beaming the Tinkerer's message. And while she snuck out of her sanctuary and back toward her dorm, the pro heroes all met with their students for a debrief. A few days later, the doors of the Heights Alliance dorm 2 opened and Midoriya emerged in his PE sweats and a plain white t-shirt. It was a Saturday morning, which meant that no school and no reporting to Endeavor's agency gave the successor a free morning. Instead of spending it by catching up on sleep like a normal teen, he decided that a brisk morning jog was the way to start the day. After all, it wasn't like he had any other options that kept him from turning into a couch potato. Grabbing his signature red boots, the inheritor began his routine with some stretches. He took a deep breath and basked in the peaking sun and crisp, spring air. As he completed his routine, his thoughts drifted back to the last few days following the robot attack. We know what she wants, and it's not good. While I'm not your teacher anymore, I'm going to say this once. Don't try and get involved with the investigation. It's likely that she'll use you as a distraction, Mr. Aizawa said to them inside the common space. It's important that you listen to Shota. The last thing we need is another kidnapping, 𝗧𝗵𝗲 commented. Midoriya sighed as he replayed that conversation in his head. He finished his stretching and was about to begin his jog when he heard the door open behind him. Standing in the doorway was 𝗂𝗧𝗏 with her track pants and a tank top. Deku, glad I caught you this time, she said with a beaming smile. The inheritor smiled back. 𝗂𝗧𝗏. I thought you were sleeping in, he said. She shook her head. I've been meaning to go for a run with you for a while, and I finally got lucky, she said. Oh, but if that's what you wanted, why not just let me know so I can wait? Midoriya asked. The gravity hero smiled sheepishly. I always intended it to be a surprise. So, surprise? Midoriya chuckled and motioned for her to follow him. Color me surprised. I thought you were green, 𝗂𝗧𝗏 commented, earning a smirk and a groan from the inheritor. She couldn't help but laugh at her own joke as the two reached the bottom of the stairs. Once they were ready, they began their jog. They paced themselves as they passed the 2°C dorm and waved at some of their classmates as they began their day. Our first week done, huh? 𝗂𝗧𝗏 asked as they continued. Midoriya nodded. I'm kinda glad. It's still pretty weird to be the assistant class rep, he said. I've been meaning to ask you about that. What's 𝗂𝗵𝗲 got you doing? He shrugged. Just going over the chores list for the dorm. She wants to make a group study calendar so we can breeze through exams without worry. You know, standard stuff, he said. 𝗂𝗧𝗏 nodded as they continued their small run. They passed by the support class's dorms, causing Midoriya to sigh. Everything okay, Deku? The gravity hero asked. Yeah, it's just. I was talking to 𝗏𝗵𝗲 the other day. The teachers are beginning their investigation and she's worried about the class. If it turns out that someone inside the class ruined the project, everyone might feel the consequences from it, he explained. There's even talk of expulsion. True, but wait, why were you talking to 𝗏𝗵𝗲? 𝗂𝗧𝗏 asked. Midoriya gestured to his wrists. She made my Air Force gloves. She is working on an upgrade for them, he explained. He smiled and bumped her shoulder playfully. Why, you're not jealous, are you? 𝗂𝗧𝗏's face burned bright red. What? What the? Where did that come from? Midoriya laughed as he started to run a little faster. Catch me to find out, he said. The gravity hero's eyes narrowed as she activated her quirk on herself. Fine then, she said with a smile as she chased after the successor. Midoriya broke from his original route and started running back toward the 2 dorm with the gravity hero in tow. Without full cowl activated, his lead against 𝗂𝗧𝗏 was shrinking while her weightless form and clothes made her as light as a feather. As soon as she was close enough to graze his clothes, he leapt forward with full cowl. With a clear advantage, he sped off toward the dorms. While they were making their way back, Marinette was standing on the front porch with a mug full of tea. Her time as Master Fu's apprentice led her to partake in some of his rituals, including tea, a ritual that she shared with her mother. While Adrien was still waking up, Marinette was alone when she saw Midoriya and 𝗂𝗧𝗏 come by. The successor had powered down full cowl, allowing the gravity hero the ability to catch up to him. She leapt at him, only to plop onto the ground as the inheritor leapt out of the way with full cow. "Come on, Uraraka. You need to be faster than that," he teased. The gravity hero leapt to her feet and tried to lunge at him. While she missed again, she landed with one hand planted onto the ground and pushed off of the ground. Midoriya barely dodged and leapt backward to distance himself. Marinette only smiled as she continued to watch the spectacle unfold. Uraraka continued to swipe at him in an attempt to remove his weight and trap him in midair. Her movements were getting faster and closer to her target, and the inheritor noticed this right away. Midoriya broke away with a smile on his face. "Now you're getting it." Uraraka's smile was as playful as his was. "What happens if I catch you?" she asked as she leapt at his direction, narrowly missing him by a hair. The inheritor said nothing as he turned and bolted toward 𝗵𝗵𝗲. "Maybe a gold star." The gravity hero watched in awe as he disappeared. She huffed and stayed floating in the air for a minute before her annoyed demeanor changed. She cancelled her quirk and chased after the inheritor. Marinette watched as she recalled her quirk and leapt into the air. The spotted heroine chuckled as she turned back into the dorm. When he entered the gym, 𝗵𝗲𝗄 had just finished cleaning up from the late-night training the day before, leaving some freshly pressed cement with a weight rack fully stocked nearby along with other pieces of equipment. The room was also devoid of any gravity heroes as well, giving Midoriya a chance at surprising Uraraka. He looked up to find a support beam directly over him. Utilizing full cow, he soared through the air and latched onto the beam with his black whip. Once he was situated, he kept his gaze on the door, waiting for the gravity hero to come in. While he focused on the door, Midoriya neglected the rooftop entrance that was on the other side of the room. The hatch slowly opened outward and Uraraka poked her head inside. Spotting the inheritor, oblivious to her presence, she tumbled inside and launched herself from one of the beams. There was nothing between her and him when she latched out and grasped the green hero. "Gotcha, 𝗬𝗧𝗪." The two fell to the ground thanks to Midoriya's still-weighted form. Pressing her fingers onto him, the two stopped their descent before they hit the ground. Uraraka kicked off of the inheritor's form as he hovered a foot off of the ground while she floated significantly higher than him. Uraraka couldn't hide the smile and twinkle in her eyes as she watched Midoriya try swimming to the ground. Finally, Uraraka let out a thunderous laugh, earning Midoriya's attention. "Well, how?" he wondered. The gravity hero beamed at him. "It's just, I finally gotcha." Midoriya watched her for a moment before he cracked a smile and joined her in laughter. The two enjoyed their time in the air for a few more moments before Uraraka broke the laughter. She smiled at the hero. "Now, where have I seen this before?" she wondered out loud. Midoriya's laughter also died down as he looked up at her. Good question. We've got to stop meeting like this though," he commented. Uraraka smiled as she released her quirk on them both. They both landed with grace, much like a pro hero would. Once they were both on the ground and Uraraka's head stopped spinning, the two met face to face. Midoriya couldn't get over Uraraka's infectious smile. From the hideout raid to the closing ceremony for Year 1, the two had been side by side through it all. He felt his cheeks burn as he continued to hold her gaze. So, Midoriya chuckled sheepishly as he rubbed the back of his head. What do you win?" he wondered. Uraraka shrugged. "How about an explanation to your comment about 𝗪𝗪𝗄?" "Oh, well, I mean, does it need explaining?" he asked, putting a finger to her chin in a thinking pose. Uraraka thought for a moment before returning her attention to him. "Well, I don't think so." She took a step closer, prompting the successor to do the same. Really? You're not curious?" Uraraka shook her head. "Nope, I already know the answer," she said, taking more steps toward him. So what do you win then?" he asked as they closed the distance between them. Uraraka smiled as she rose onto her toes and wrapped her arms around his neck. "Well, how about a proper good morning?" Midoriya mimicked her smile as he leaned in. "Good morning, Achako." 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 sec. I knew it. The sudden outburst startled the couple as they leapt away from each other. Standing at the doorway of the gym was Marinette and Adrien with their suitcases filled with their hero costumes. The duo both had wide eyes and even wider smiles on their faces. "I knew there was something going on here," Marinette bellowed as they entered the gym. The two heroes felt their faces burn bright red. "I gotta admit, I am a little jealous of you too. I mean, you guys are so cute and you can be public with it," Adrien commented. Midoriya's hands found his face as he shook his head. Uraraka was fanning herself as she tried to calm herself down. Though, in hindsight, maybe just announcing ourselves wasn't such a good idea. Marinette mused as she watched the two. "We probably scared them half to death," Adrien said. Once she felt she was calm enough, Uraraka took a deep breath. "Oh, how long have you guys been here?" Just a few minutes," Marinette responded. "So, how long?" Midoriya peeked through his fingers. 6 months. Give or take," he said. "Give or take." Midoriya's comment struck at Adrien particularly. He nodded. Well, being in your dimension for 2 months it kinda helped us along. After we came back, Deku asked me to a movie and dinner. We went on a few dates, but we kinda already knew that we. 𝗵𝗃 smiled. Say no more, you guys. We're happy for you, and Adrian's got a point. At least you don't need to hide it from anyone, she said. Midoriya settled his hands for a moment. Well, that's not true. Our parents know about it, and I sort of asked All Might for some advice about dating. It wasn't helpful, 𝗬𝗧𝗏 said. But that's about it. We haven't told our friends yet, he explained. Why not? 𝗬𝗧𝗏 smiled. 2 words, Mina, Ashido. It took 𝗵𝗏 a moment to think about it before. Oh, she's like Alia. Adrian chuckled. She nearly outed us during a double date. It looked like a group outing, but she almost spilled the beans with a few reporters nearby. He explained. 𝗵𝗏 nodded. Yeah, that was almost a mess. But still, why not come clean? 𝗬𝗧𝗏 smiled. Besides the fact that she would be hounding us for details about anything, it's kinda nice being secretive. It's sort of exciting, she admitted. Midoriya agreed. It's kinda grown on me too, he said. Right. Anyway, we're glad that you guys broke out of your shells and finally made a move. Kinda wish we were there though, 𝗵𝗏 said. The 2 heroes smiled. So, since we got that out of the way, what are you guys doing here? Midoriya asked. And why are you suited up? Well, Adrian started. We kinda wanted to do a quick sparring session to wake up. Then afterwards, we'll be joining the teachers in the investigation, 𝗵𝗏 continued. The news caught the couple by surprise. Wait, what? You guys are conducting the investigation too? Adrian nodded. I guess that since we're technically pro-heroes in our world, what with Master Fu's teachings as guardians and whatnot, we can help in the investigation. It's kinda funny and sucky that we got a working vacation here, he said. 𝗵𝗏 smiled. The homework we were getting along with you guys was enough as it was, but what's been happening? It's like trouble is stalking us, she said. You have no idea, the couple simultaneously said. But that's until later. Say, you guys have your costumes. It would be great to see you both in action, Adrian said. The couple nodded. I'll go get them, Midoriya volunteered. He turned to 𝗬𝗧𝗏. Your room, right? She nodded. Underneath my bed. My belt is on my bed since the compartment started springing open, she said. Midoriya smiled and pecked her on the cheek. Be right back, he said. He powered up full cowl and sped off toward the dorm in a flash of green light. As they waited, 𝗬𝗧𝗏 glanced at the miraculous duo. Adrian was twirling his staff while 𝗵𝗏 was gripping her yo-yo while also twisting in place. She noticed how 𝗵𝗏 reacted to Midoriya's black whip. And honestly, it shocked her too when she heard about it. After his meeting with All Might and 𝗵𝘃𝗀, she sat down with them to discuss the finer details of the situation. She sighed. All of those powers. How terrifying, she thought to herself. But it had also not escaped her notice that 𝗵𝗏 was frustrated. Despite the details of their last 6 months and their adventures, there were still many things that they didn't go over. The assassins that tried to kill Midoriya, the internship with Endeavor, the battle with the Paranormal Liberation Front, as well as the resurgence of Namu in the country. 𝗬𝗧𝗏 had half a mind to bring them up to full speed, but she never did. Midoriya came racing back into the room with the 2 suitcases in hand. Got it. Unfortunately, Ieyasu didn't want me to get your suit since it wasn't proper for me to be in there, he said. 𝗬𝗧𝗏 cracked a smile. 1 week as class rep and she is already establishing dorm rules. Midoriya chuckled. Yeah, but she's not that old-fashioned, I think. Anyway, I had to tell her that we were training today, he admitted. Thankfully, Kaken didn't hear me, otherwise he would be here right about now. In the dorms, 𝗵𝘃𝗀 was eating his breakfast when he let out a huge sneeze, sending milk and Fruit Loops into the air. Kirishima and Gyro both exclaimed in disgust as they ran to the bathrooms to wash out the milk and mucus. Gathering his senses, the explosive hero laughed as they bolted from the kitchen. Anyway, Midoriya continued. How'll we do this? 𝗵𝗏 smiled. Just get changed and we'll get started. Handing 𝗬𝗧𝗏 her case, the couple went off to their respective changing rooms located on the other side of the gym. Several moments later, mainly due to Midoriya stumbling out of the changing booth in his boxers and Adrian having to shield her eyes, the couple was ready for their impromptu training exercise. Adrian noted the changes in his costume, especially the Air Force gloves. It was also the first time he saw the subtle changes to 𝗬𝗧𝗏's costume as well. Alright, so here's what I'm thinking. Adrian, 𝗬𝗧𝗏 and I all try to rush Midoriya, 𝗵𝗏 said. The couple felt their jaws hit the floor. What? Why me? Adrian smiled. Because, well, it's obvious, isn't it? Besides the newer getup, you have a new technique that we really haven't had a chance to see in action. And since it looks like you guys train together, perhaps it would be a fun spar between the 2 of you, he reasoned. Midoriya looked toward the gravity hero as she was in thought. Well, it is true that we have been training, and I didn't get to face you in the sports festival like I wanted to, so. She smiled. Sounds like a plan. 𝗬𝗧𝗏𝗏. The gravity hero gave a thumbs up at him. Don't worry, Deku, it'll be fun. Besides, you need to practice your black whip against enemy targets instead of dumbbells, she said. The inheritor was about to argue before he paused for a moment. 𝗵𝗏𝗏 watched as his mulled over the idea in his head for a moment before reversing his decision. All right, sounds like a plan, he said. The gravity hero smiled. Perfect. 𝗂𝗧𝗏 joined the miraculous heroes as they all readied their weapons. All right, so here are the rules. We need to get our enemy on their backs for about 5 seconds to get them out. Deku, I'm sure you can do that despite the odds, so good luck, the gravity hero said. He nodded. If you get all 3 of us, you win. But if we get you, despite taking down 2 of us, we all win. Midoriya smiled as he powered up his quirk. He felt his base limit of 5% being passed as it stretched over his first real milestone, 8%. As he continued to power up, full cowl became brighter, earning a gleeful smile from 𝗂𝗧𝗏. For Adrien and 𝗵𝗏𝗏, however, it was shock and awe. When the light from his quirk finally stabilized, Midoriya felt his new milestone being met, 25% power. His workout regimes after the attempted attack by several powerful villains months prior, as well as their battle with the Paranormal Liberation Front, granted him with some more muscle hidden underneath his suit. Now more form-fitting, he had a body of a brawler hero. He smiled at the miraculous heroes. My new limit is a little hard to hold on to. 25% power increases my speed and strength as well as agility. It also passes my minimum requirement of black whip, giving me some room to work around with it as well as continue to build my comfort levels, he told them. 𝗂𝗧𝗏 nodded with a glimmer in her eyes. We've been working hard on that ever since we came back from your world. He used 20% against Overhaul before jumping straight into 100%. That was almost the same as his fight with Titan. Remember? She asked the miraculous heroes. They both nodded slowly. Damn, you guys never cease to surprise, eh? The inheritors smiled. But it wasn't just me. Show them 𝗂𝗧𝗏. She raised up her gauntlets. I got new gauntlets with a modification from 𝗧𝗵𝗏. Against my own objections. Hey, they didn't explode, right? She shook her head. No, but the fear is still there now that you reminded me. Adrien snickered while Midoriya, about as powerful as he could be, blushed and scratched the back of his head. I got a grapple hook. Since in some cases I can't move around so well while under the effects of my quirk, this thing can help me get some momentum to move around. I can also use it to latch onto villains and keep up with his black whip, she said. Compressed air boosters are still in the works, but I doubt that 𝗧𝗵𝗏 is focusing on that right now. 𝗵𝗏𝗏 nodded. Right, so we better get some time in. I want to get some sparring in before we get it that second. Her jacket pocket started to beep rapidly. Midoriya powered down upon hearing the familiar sound as it echoed throughout the building. Adrien's pockets, which housed his phone, also began to beep rapidly. The model slumped forward as he grabbed his phone and read the message. Bugaboo, they're asking us to come in, he said. She read the same message. Talk about the letdown of the century. Damn, and I wanted to see your guys' new moves in action, she cursed. The heroic duo approached the miraculous duo. It's like they knew, huh? 𝗂𝗧𝗏 asked. Adrien nodded. Anyway, I guess we have to go. Same time tomorrow, 𝗵𝗏𝗏 asked. Midoriya nodded. It's fine, really. A hero's work is never done, he said, except during lunch, 𝗂𝗧𝗏 added. Adrien high-fived the gravity hero for her comment. I miss seeing Tiki and Plag, 𝗂𝗧𝗏 said. Same here. It's strange that I still don't feel their presence, 𝗵𝗏𝗏 said. She paused for a moment. I wonder, maybe if they're hiding somewhere, I can draw them out. How? Midoriya wondered. Like this, Tiki, spots on. Her magical words echoed throughout the room, but a streak of red did not appear. The miraculous duo scanned the room, finding nothing that resembled either of their 𝗏𝗏𝗏, until 𝗵𝗏𝗏 had barely seen it. But a light blue bulge had just disappeared near where Midoriya was standing. Spots on. The bulge had reappeared. Light blue energy appeared with a faint red spot in the middle. Midoriya and 𝗂𝗧𝗏 closed in on the energy with their eyes wide in awe. Is that? 𝗵𝗏𝗏 nodded. Dimensional energy. By Io. I read a tome from Master Fu's library. There's a veil of energy around each universe. It's so thin that we can't see it unless something is pushing into it, Adrien said. He raised his ring hand up. Plag, claws out. The bulge of energy reappeared, this time with a darker spot in the middle of it. It's Plag and Tiki. They're not in this dimension at all. After going over their plans for the day, Midoriya and 𝗂𝗧𝗏 had gone back to their dorms to change and spend their sat doing whatever they needed to do, leaving the miraculous duo to check in with the other heroes. Upon arriving to their meeting point, the duo met with several heroes, including Snipe, Mr. Aizawa, and a woman with black spiky hair. Midnight's appearance momentarily startled the heroes as she stood in the center of the room, locked eyes with them, and winked. Adrien felt his face burn up bright as she returned to her conversation with the cowboy hero. As the two entered the room, they were greeted by a skinny man with blonde hair. His eyes were hollow and black with bright blue irises shining through them. He wore a form-fitting white collar shirt with a black vest. He waved at them. Ah, you two must be those heroes from the other dimension. I'm sorry you had to be brought in like this, he said. 𝗵𝗃 smiled. It's the least we could do, she said. Right, and we don't mind at all. Heroics is what we do in our world, 𝗂𝗏 commented. The man laughed. Oh, you're hitting that nail on the head hard. He extended his hand at them. The name's All Might, but my civilian name is 𝗧𝗵𝗲. You can call me whatever. As 𝗵𝗃 shook his hand, realization dawned on 𝗂𝗏 as if he discovered the secrets of the universe. So you're All Might. Midoriya and Uraraka told us stories about you. All Might smiled. Yeah, that's them. Sorry that I physically don't match their descriptions of those stories, he said. While heroics is a trait and a job, it's also a speedy way toward retirement. 𝗂𝗏 smiled. Regardless, sir, it's an honor to meet you. Midoriya had some clips on his phone of your earlier rescues, and I gotta say, you're like Superman in our world. And even Majestia. The former pro was smiling. Gee, thanks. Superman was actually the inspiration of my Golden Age suit, he said. So he's a comic book hero in this world too. Well, in the old days, but now all right everyone. The two blondes turned to see Principal 𝗫𝗠 standing on his desk. He was flanked by a tall man with white hair and tubes coming out of his body and a smaller man with construction gear on his head and arms. I'm terribly sorry to call you all in on a say, but we cannot afford to have the police and the general public know about this situation. The recent attacks made by the support department's quirk identification and combat drones have gone on long enough with only one serious injury on this tinkerer's record, he explained. Thankfully, our school has a wide assortment of teachers and faculty members that can work efficiently and discreetly. Whoever is behind the computer screen of these robots will be facing justice soon enough. And that is a guarantee based on my faith in each and every single one of you, he continued. Now, you all will be given a job to do and not a lot of time to do it. Vlad King, you and 𝗃𝗄𝗏 will lead the initial investigation into the support class. I'm sorry to say this, but the evidence does point to your classes. The man in the construction gear nodded his giant head. I understand. I can only hope that the culprit will surrender peacefully, he said. 𝗫𝗠 nodded. Present Mike, 13, and Aizawa will canvass ground beta. If anything, that is the perfect place to hide a few dozen robots. The three heroes nodded. Hound Dog will canvass ground Omega along with Midnight and Ectoplasm. Snipe and 𝗵𝗏𝗃 will finally canvass ground Gamma. 𝗵𝗏, Dupain Chang, and Adrian Agrest will be inspecting the various warehouses that are in the support class. 𝗃𝗄𝗏, they will need your master key. On it, 𝗵𝗏 turned her attention over to Midnight as she fiddled with her whip. Her eyes widened as she realized what she was dressed up as exactly. She covered her mouth as she recognized the white material that covered her entirely. She can teach here. In that. No, get it together, 𝗵𝗏. This is a delicate situation we are in. Unlike the 𝐿.S.J. incident last year, we have the upper hand this time. We know the villain is here and she may very well be working alone. Her means of defense will adapt to us, true, but we are not pros simply because we rely on our quirks. We are strong in the mind and the spirit, and no force on earth can overcome those traits of ours. Like All Might has taught us for many years, go beyond. Plus ultra. The room of teachers cheered, catching the miraculous heroes by surprise. Once that was done, they all left the room, except for All Might, the duo, and Principal 𝗫𝗠. As Adrian and 𝗵𝗃 left, the spotted heroine looked back to see the former pro talking to the principal. She didn't get a chance to hear anything before the door closed on her, beginning their assignment. When 𝗂𝗏 was first founded and the support class was established, the principal at the time believed that a wide assortment of gear would be created by the class and would eventually need to be stored. And so, several off-the-books warehouses were built throughout the grounds so that various inventions could be stored if they ever broke, exploded, or worked. It was impossible to tell the difference with some of them. And as many years passed, more warehouses were built as well as a recycling center. Thankfully, the head of the support division would always have a map of the locations on hand, while the principal would at least be made aware of their existence. The head of the department would then decide if they should reveal their locations to said principal. That was always the case. And so, with their own map in hand, 𝗵𝗃 and Adrian dove into the forest surrounding 𝗂𝗏 in the search of these warehouses. Adrian's cat ears were on high alert, pivoting toward sources of even the smallest sounds around them. Because of the dimensional travel, his vision had also improved, so there was little he couldn't see, making 𝗵𝗃 jealous. You know, if I had a large cardboard dish, I'd put it on your head and have you pivot all over the place, the brunette said, breaking the silence between them. Adrian laughed as he twirled his staff away from his partner. You mean the cone of shame? Good luck getting that on my head, he teased. Luck isn't all that I have, kitty. The blonde smiled. They continued walking in silence for a few moments before he brought up their mission. So these kids get their own warehouses on campus? Exactly what kind of school does that? 𝗵𝗃 shrugged. Well, we are in an alternate dimension that is roughly 200 years ahead of us. We're also in a world where almost everybody has a superpower, she stated. Giant school campuses that provide secret storage warehouses doesn't sound too far off. Well, when you say it like that, then yeah. But think about it. These kids can build anything they want and they can just secretly store them anywhere on the grounds. What if something explodes? I'm sure they've thought that far ahead. True. But that would mean they had to actually consider it after something happened, right? Who's been leaving bombs in warehouses and having them accidentally explode? The brunette groaned. Kitty, we're standing on the grounds of a school that is very much like a superhero Hogwarts. I'm pretty sure that they thought of everything when they built this place, she said. Well, except for undercover villains. Adrian had paused for a moment. Well, yeah, that's a good point. The two continued walking through the foliage in silence until they heard the low sound of metal slamming against metal. They followed the sound as it grew louder and louder until they heard some profanity-filled mumbling. Once they broke through the clearing, they found 𝗵𝗃𝗧𝗵𝗲 repeatedly slamming an oversized wrench into a control panel on one of the warehouses. The duo eyed each other before they approached her. Stupid, lying, pompous piece of 𝐒𝐩𝐢𝐵. The pink-haired tinkerer spun in place with wide eyes and her wrench in hand. I didn't do it. Adrian was taken back at her immediate denial for a moment. 𝗵𝗃𝗧𝗵𝗲 chuckled nervously as she dropped the wrench, barely missing her foot in the process. So, what are doing? The blonde hero asked. Well, I was, Marinette arched her brows as she stepped toward her with her hand hovering over her yo-yo. 𝗵𝗃𝗧𝗵𝗲, what's going on? Well, funny you should ask, really. See, as soon as I heard that one of the warehouses containing the QICDs was broken into, I knew that someone in the support department knew where exactly they were. I checked the map of the warehouses, and while I was making my way to one, well, Adrian had his arms crossed. Well, I found one. This warehouse isn't on the map, so it's not registered, she said. Not too far from here is the warehouse that was hit. Well, this could be a temporary spot. I thought that too. Until I tried getting inside. 𝗵𝗃𝗧𝗵𝗲 pulled out her school ID and showed it to the two heroes. These IDs are supposed to grant all of us access to these warehouses. The system scans the cards and cross-references with the official school database and our status as student. Mine doesn't work here, and I'm guessing that this thing isn't registered with the database, meaning that someone is using this warehouse secretly, Marinette deduced. May smiled and nodded. I was just about to get in. Boo, you guys just so happened to show up here, she said. Adrian smiled and approached the door. Well, thankfully I can destroy anything I touch. Bugaboo, Marinette nodded. Do warrants work the same here as our universe? Court order. Yeah, pretty much. But if Principal Nezu gave the go-ahead. Go for it, 𝗵𝗃𝗧𝗵𝗲 said. Adrian swiped at the control panel on the side of the door. Cataclysm. Sparks flew as the device nearly exploded on contact. With it offline, a loud clank could be heard from the door as it rose up for a second before dropping to the ground. The blonde hero then grabbed the door, with 𝗵𝗃𝗧𝗵𝗲's help, and pushed the door open. Once they were inside, 𝗵𝗃𝗧𝗵𝗲 screamed, "My babies!" Her outburst sent Marinette and Adrian bursting into the room. "You're what?" they bellowed in unison. 𝗵𝗃𝗧𝗵𝗲's eyes were wide as her jaw was low. Inside the warehouse and sorted neatly into crates were her many inventions. Air compression backpacks, grapple hook belts, and a pair of red jet boosters were accompanied with others, including a prototype pair of Midoriya's Air Force gloves and a floating metal globe with several light bulbs on it. There was even a cannon inside with a pair of very familiar balls. As 𝗵𝗃𝗧𝗵𝗲 walked through the assortment of inventions, Adrian and Marinette were both browsing the many gadgets. Marinette found a broken pair of large metal handcuffs as well as a stun baton that was broken in half. The blonde walked by a giant white suit of armor with a mannequin head on top. Hanging around its neck was a sign that simply said "Oops." Marinette stopped at a pair of boots. "Suo, these are yours." "Oh, definitely. I remember making many of these." She pointed to another large power suit braced against a far wall. "That one explodes after the course stays online for a few minutes. I think it was 3 minutes or 4, but I can't remember." "Oh, lovely." She pointed to the other one. "I had Midoriya in that one. Almost broke him in half, but I think that I found the problem. I'll have him test it later," she said, nonchalantly. She pointed also to the cast iron cannon with the 2 balls. "There's my more recent baby. Unit number 142 is a trans-dimensional cannon capable of breaking through the walls of the universe and find another based on a DNA sample," she said. "I tried using that to find Midoriya and Adrian." "Boo-what?" Adrian got a closer look at it. And when he did, his eyes went wide. That almost hit us 2 years ago," he bellowed. Marinette's reaction was similar. "That's the Disco Pirate Cannonball. That was you." 𝗵𝗃𝗧𝗵𝗲 turned to them with an accomplished look on her face. "No regrets." She looked back on them. "Funny enough, I fired one of those, but it never came back. As it turns out, it was found 2 months prior because the heroes had no idea what it was, so they took it as evidence." She smiled. "Funny, huh?" Marinette sighed. "So you nearly hit me with a cannonball and think that's funny? Well, yeah, obviously you didn't die, so that's a plus. 𝗵𝗃 felt her jaw drop. They continued walking regardless, listening to 𝗧𝗵𝗲 listing off the various inventions that she had inside the shed. That one was supposed to be in my room. It's a prototype high-density weights, she pointed out. Ah, those were fun to make. She grabbed them and shoved them into Adrian's face. Perfect little babies, aren't they? They definitely do you some good with weight training. Slap these bad boys on and they'll adjust to your current weight. A quarter of your weight is added, so you'll definitely feel it. 𝗬𝗏 great. Adrian backed away as 𝗧𝗵𝗲 got further into his face. Meanwhile, 𝗵𝗃 was looking at a grapple net gun that sat on a lone shelf. Holy saints, you have a lot of stuff in here. You made all of these? Ooh yeah. Like 2 or 3 of them were made with some help from some of my classmates. She looked over to the back of the room. Hey, that's my bomb shelter. 𝗵𝗃 did a double take as she said that. Sure enough, in the back of the room and tucked in a dark corner was an octagon-shaped structure with an open door. The inside was padded with a reflective vest inside and a sign that simply said, "Not my fault." On the outer walls of the structure was a spray-painted pair of steampunk goggles. As 𝗧𝗵𝗲 approached the structure, Adrian stayed behind and gestured toward the tinkerer student. "Is she nuts?" he whispered to his partner. 𝗵𝗃 shrugged. "She made a bomb shelter. As for why, I don't want to know." Adrian nodded as he turned back to the salmon-haired girl. Her attention shifted toward a randomly placed fuse box on a support beam next to the structure. She opened the door and inside was a single red button. 𝗵𝗃 saw the button and her eyes widened. 𝗧𝗵𝗲, don't. The tinkering support student turned to her with the widest smile ever created. Big red buttons are begging to be pushed, you know. And without skipping a beat, she slammed her fist into the button. The sound of heavy machinery echoed throughout the warehouse, catching the attention of everyone in the room. Behind them, the door leading into the building had sealed itself shut, trapping them inside. In the middle of the room, a bunch of wooden crates were elevated along with a part of the floor, revealing a large disc-shaped platform. The miraculous duo and 𝗧𝗵𝗲 all approached the center of the room as the platform began to glow blue. "If it looks like a trap and feels like a trap," Adrian began. 𝗵𝗃 nodded. "𝗧𝗵𝗲, you should stay here and like hell." She pushed past them both and leapt onto the platform. "Well, come on." Adrian turned to 𝗵𝗃. The brunette shrugged as they both joined her onto the platform. After a second of standing there, Adrian leaned over to his partner and whispered, "This is definitely a trap." 𝗵𝗃 nodded as 𝗧𝗵𝗲 found a button on the floor. As the pro heroes concluded their investigation into the students at their dorm, the tinkerer managed to slip out of the building with a backpack slung across her back. As she made her way to ground beta, her attention was fixed on her cell phone, where a live feed was playing. In it, 𝗵𝗃 and company were wandering around the warehouse she had set up in the forest surrounding the school. She smiled as she switched away from the live feed. Pressing through her phone, she opened her phone book to a single contact and opened the call. As she waited for the call to connect, she eyed the two a building and saw Midoriya and 𝗬𝗏𝗏 leaving their dorm and walking toward the main entrance of the campus. They saw her and waved at her, a gesture they happily returned. Finally, the call connected. "Speak." Tamura Shigaraki said. "Hey, it's me. Just letting you know that I'm going to be running a little early. Turns out my schedule cleared up and I got some free time," she said in a cheery voice. "Is anybody around you right now?" "Yep. It's like everybody wants to do something on a Saturday all of a sudden," she answered. Shigaraki grumbled on the other end. "Do you have what you promised me you'd get? You're nearing your deadline. I keep meaning to forward the link to you, but I keep forgetting. I'll surely send it later tonight. Promise, just get it done. I don't care at this point. I want Izuku Midoriya's medical chart," the Grand Commander demanded. The tinkerer smiled as she eyed Present Mike, 13, and Aizawa leaving the grounds. "Oh, trust me, that secret recipe will be yours soon enough." While 𝗵𝗃 and Adrian were in the UA universe, Alia and Nino were busy keeping their shoes filled in their universe. For starters, Hawkmoth had taken a few days off from his attacks after the miraculous duo left, giving the new duo a chance to get settled in. For starters, Alia had to adjust to living with Trix under her roof. The junior reporter for the latest blog woke up roughly at about 6:15 every morning just so she could get her 𝗬𝗏𝗄 some scones. It was also the time that her parents would be up and taking her sisters to school. With it being her last year of public school, it made the responsibility so much more strenuous as she had to juggle her university applications with exams as well as superhero duty and the latest blog, a responsibility that she knew she was going to endure once she signed on. When Hawkmoth did release an Akuma, everybody noticed a change in the air. A villain by the name of Clockwork, a historian that longed for the funding to keep his department from turning to dust, had taken half of the city and plunged it to the pre-revolutionary days. The villain wore a light blue three-piece suit with a white shirt, gold tie, and silver shoes. He wore a black top hat that sat crooked on his head with several different clock faces arranged around it. His suit sleeves had several arrows, representing the hands on a clock, running from his shoulders to his hands. His eyes were completely purple and outlined with gold. He raised up his pocket watch at the two heroes that came to stop him. If 𝗧𝗵𝗃 and 𝗵𝗃 can't be bothered to show up, then this whole city will be lost to the Dark Ages, he bellowed as he stood on the spire of the Notre Dame. I'll go even further if I must. 𝗓𝗏 and 𝗂𝐽𝐵 stood side by side as they peered up at the villain. Pre-revolutionary soldiers were surrounding them with muskets drawn as they were told that they were English agents hell-bent on taking their land. Any ideas, 𝗓𝗏? 𝗂𝐽𝐵 wondered. The fox-themed hero sighed as she continued to scan the air around them. I'm thinking about food, she mused. He just has the worst timing. 𝗂𝐽𝐵 smirked. Clockwork or 𝗂𝐴𝐵? Yes, was her answer. I had this nice chicken bowl that I'd been looking forward to for hours. I skipped breakfast, and my first meal of the day is interrupted with Vogue's worst style of all time over here. One of the soldiers thrusted his musket directly into 𝗂𝐽𝐵's face. The English will never have us. Never. Hey, I totally understand, bro. Who even wants the English? They have the colonies. They have more than enough. 𝗓𝗏 coughed. Well, as she scanned the area, she saw that the spire that Clockwork was standing on was not the tallest structure in the area. Her eyes darted between the 𝗂𝐴𝐵 and the spires while her head made some small and frequent nods. If we do that, then well, maybe if we go. Clockwork watched the two and gripped his pocket watch. He checked its time and growled. This is taking too damn long. The purple mask of 𝗂𝐴𝐵 appeared in front of him. Clockwork, hurry this up already. In fact, don't bother with the psychics and just find 𝗧𝗵𝗃 and 𝗵𝗃. But they haven't shown up yet. They could be anywhere, even in the present-day part of the city. I don't care. Find them or I'm taking your powers away. Clockwork sighed as he face-palmed, an instance that 𝗓𝗏 was hoping for. She quickly raised her flute to her lips and played a low, but powerful note. Summoning her magic, she poured her idea into the spell and raised her flute. Ready? She asked 𝗂𝐽𝐵. He smiled. Go for it, bushy-tail, he quipped. The soldiers, momentarily stunned by the appearance of magical energy on the tip of her flute, failed to react accordingly as her plan unfolded. Mirage. She slammed the magic into the ground, sending an explosion of orange smoke into the air. Clockwork reacted too late as he was blinded by the magic that had been unleashed. When the smoke cleared up, the soldiers as well as the 𝗂𝐴𝐵 were all surprised to see 𝗓𝗏 and 𝗂𝐽𝐵 still standing there with their eyes shut tight. After a moment, both of the heroes slowly opened their eyes to see everyone, simply staring at them. 𝗂𝐽𝐵 smiled and waved to everyone. So, remember, before you perform a magic trick, be sure to say Alakazam or something. It really sells it, he said sheepishly. 𝗓𝗏, meanwhile, was staring at her flute in disbelief. Her eyes were wide and her jaw was nearly on the ground. I don't understand. It should have worked. We should have disappeared. She breathed it out. Clockwork, previously worried, felt his smile return to him. So, you two really are worthless psychics. I guess 𝗧𝗵𝗃 and 𝗵𝗃 simply don't feel like supporting two worthless and would-be heroes, he taunted. He laughed soon afterward, only joined by some of the soldiers. As their laughter roared, 𝗂𝐽𝐵 dropped his head, covering the smile that was forming across his lips. 3, 2, and it's rude to be putting such hard-working heroes down like that. A voice rang out. Clockwork turned so quickly. He almost lost his balance and fell off the spire. High above him on a set of spires directly over him were 𝗧𝗵𝗃 and 𝗵𝗃. The cat-themed hero had his staff out while the spotted hero gripped her yo-yo tightly. You'd think some villains would have some class. The nerve, 𝗂𝐵. 𝗧𝗵𝗃 called him out. Yo-oh-oh. For shame. Cat jeered at the villain. Both villains watched as 𝗧𝗵𝗃 leapt off of her spire and lassoed her yo-yo at a nearby ledge. Yanking herself forward, she launched straight at the 𝗂𝐴𝐵. Clockwork ducked out of instinct as 𝗧𝗵𝗃 flew past him. Adjusting course, the spotted hero lassoed the spire he was on and swung toward the soldiers down below. While that was happening, Cat dropped in for his attack. Falling directly in front of him, Cat summoned his power. Cataclysm. He bellowed as he struck the cathedral with his miraculous energy. Black tendrils of energy surged through the building, shaking the foundation that the villain was standing on. In a fit of panic, he leapt off of the building and directly in the path of 𝗧𝗵𝗃. Instead, 𝗓𝗏's flute was flying through the air at the villain. It passed through 𝗧𝗵𝗃, revealing it to simply be a mirage. Stunned, the villain turned to see the cathedral to be perfectly fine. Black smoke from the 𝗵𝗃 mirage was the last thing to fade away. The villain had no time to react as the flute impacted his hand, knocking the pocket watch out of his hand. No, you played me. 𝗂𝐽𝐵's shell shield flew out after the flute, slamming into the villain's stomach. He was sent crashing into the cathedral before slamming into the ground below. Soaring through the air, 𝗓𝗏 reached out and grabbed the pocket watch as well as her flute as it was embedded into the structure. Gotcha, little guy. She raised the watch up so that 𝗂𝐽𝐵 could see. The soldiers, bewildered by what they had seen, dropped their weapons and backed away from the shell hero. I've always wanted to say this, so She dropped the watch and smashed it onto the ground, revealing the cursed butterfly. "No more evil doing for you, little 𝗂𝐭𝐲." As it flew away, 𝗧𝗏 raised her flute to her lips and played a note. The genie's lamp appeared in a puff of orange smoke at her feet. She grabbed it, raised its spout at the fleeing 𝗂𝐭𝐲, and opened its lid. A surge of energy overwhelmed her as a tunnel of storm clouds erupted from its spout. The 𝗂𝐭𝐲 found it pointless to escape as it was effortlessly sucked into the lamp. Before 𝗧𝗏 could close it, she noticed that the clouds hovering over the pre-revolutionary Paris were being drawn in toward the cathedral. With an idea forming in her head, she raised the lamp and continued to draw in magical energy. The world began to lose its old charm as modern technology began returning to the citizens of the city. The clouds drew the old buildings as well as the soldiers in the atmosphere of an upcoming war. All of that magic surged around the cathedral and poured into the lamp through the storm clouds it had created until finally, the storm ceased. 𝗧𝗏 sealed the lamp, keeping the magic inside and sending a shockwave of energy throughout the world. 𝗧𝗏, her hair a mess after all of that energy, stared in disbelief at the object in her hands. 𝗂𝐴rapace, after comforting the 𝗂𝐭𝐲 victim, leapt up the cathedral and landed on the platform that she was on. 𝗧𝗏, you all right? A fox-themed hero nodded. Man, when 𝗧𝗱𝗏𝗺 and 𝗏𝗵𝗲 gave us this lamp, I wasn't expecting all of it. Well, this. She opened the lid, and breathless from her action, released the butterfly within. Bye-bye, little butterfly. 𝗂𝗏apace smiled. Well, at least the job is done. He raised his fist at her. Pound it. 𝗧𝗏 looked at him with a bit of a confused look. After a moment, she smiled and mirrored his action. Pound it. In 𝗂𝐵𝗵𝗲's lair, the villain in question stood with his shoulders slumped over and a bewildered look on his face. Did I just... Wait, what? He bellowed. Behind him, his assistant Natalie stood with a tablet in her hands. "Yes, sir." He turned on the spot to face her. I can. They didn't show. What the hell? "Yes, sir, if you'll just calm down for just a second. I had the perfect 𝗂𝐭𝐲 to take 𝗧𝗱𝗏𝗺 and 𝗏𝗵𝗲's miraculouses, and they just stood me up. They sent these two sidekicks of theirs and cleaned up the whole mess. Unbelievable." The villain slammed his cane down onto the ground, startling his assistant behind him. "Sir, it's possible that this was a one-time deal. We should regroup and try again later," she advised. "It doesn't make sense. Those two have never missed an 𝗂𝐭𝐲 in the 4 years that we've been doing this." Natalie shrugged. "Again, sir, this may be a one-time deal. They may be testing to see if they have what it takes to defeat an 𝗂𝐭𝐲 on their own," she reasoned. The villain stopped for a moment and sighed. "You better be right. I'll give them this victory for now. But I know their identities. I will strike back and I will have 2 powerful miraculouses within my grasp." The ocular window sealed itself as 𝗂𝐵𝗵𝗲 transformed and returned to the elevator from whence he came. Upon arriving back to his office, Gabriel Agres turned to his assistant with a cold, blank stare. "What news of my son's trip in Italy?" he asked. "He's doing well, actually. He still hasn't sent any pictures, but he said that he is on a tour with Ms. Dupain-Cheng in Rome. I'm sure he'll send some pictures soon," she said. Gabriel nodded as he turned his attention to his computer. Natalie noticed that he said nothing of the matter and kept talking. "Sir, might I say that I think it is tremendous progress to allow him this trip. It's good for Adrien to spend time with his friends," she said. The blonde villain's nose twitched. "Don't mistake this as a sign that I trust the outside world with my son. He is set to graduate and proceed into university. This is his chance to experience the outside world before returning to pursue his modeling," he said in a monotone voice. Natalie looked at her boss. "Sir." Gabriel turned and walked away from his desk. As he left his office, he turned to his assistant. "Wake me up in a few hours. I'm going to take a nap," he said. Then he left the room, leaving Natalie alone with the tablet in her hands. A few weeks passed since that first 𝗂𝐭𝐲, and ever since then, 𝗂𝐵𝗵𝗲 had been sending his best work to gauge a response from 𝗧𝗱𝗏𝗺 and 𝗏𝗵𝗲. With each and every 𝗂𝐭𝐲 that was defeated, 𝗂𝐵𝗵𝗲 had more and more of his patience chipped away. As 𝗂𝐭𝐲 started making more mistakes and his tantrums were getting worse. Unlike 𝗂𝐵𝗵𝗲, most of the city had noticed that 𝗧𝗱𝗏𝗺 and 𝗏𝗵𝗲 weren't showing up to fights. Forums on the 𝗧𝗱 were filled with theories of their disappearance, ranging from alien abductions to early retirements to even a possible superpowered bun in the oven. Alia often read those theories and laughed as she imagined that it could be a possibility. One night, while they were out on patrol, the two were met with another 𝗂𝐭𝐲. This 𝗂𝐭𝐲, as the victim loved Halloween, was transformed so that she could turn people into monsters and plunge Paris into an endless night so that Halloween would last forever. With the powers at her disposal, she was dubbed the Pumpkin Queen. The 𝗂𝐭𝐲 wore a jack-o'-lantern with a skeleton 3-piece suit. The shirt underneath was low-cut with a loose tie around her neck and a skeleton's ribcage design. Her blazer was black with white accents and gold pumpkin buttons. Reaching into her pocket, she pulled out smaller pumpkins with butterfly carvings that, once they made contact with any person, would transform them into random monsters. 𝗧𝗏 and 𝗂𝗏apace were quick to the scene. This time, with her regular outfit, 𝗁𝐴 discovered a funny little quirk with the genie's lamp. Much like a miraculous, it could enter camouflage mode for easier transport. The jewelry she chose for easy transport was an Arabian hand chain with several precious gemstones on the back of the hand and on each finger. With an easy maneuver, she could slip the chain off of her hand and it would turn into the lamp immediately. While they rushed to where the Pumpkin Queen was holed up, there were 2 witches flying around on broomsticks and throwing pumpkins all over the place. How is it that people love Halloween more than any other holiday? 𝗂𝐴𝐵 inquired as he ran alongside his girlfriend. 𝗁𝐴 shrugged. Free candy. Or the memes. The turtle-themed hero smiled as he passed around a chimney. Probably just the memes, he said. I can't wait for the real Halloween when I can dress up as 𝗏𝗵𝗲. Wow, and not the ever-so-beautiful 𝗁𝐴 Rouge. I've never been so insulted, the fox-themed hero said in faux distraught. 𝗂𝐵 chuckled. Let's face it, owls, I can't rock orange like you can. 𝗁𝐴 bit her tongue as she continued running. The 2 leapt over the last chimney before dropping into the courtyard of the Louvre. There, the Pumpkin Queen was lounging on 2 Frankenstein's monsters while being fanned by a few mummies. Once they touched down, the 𝗂𝐴𝐵 popped up with a wide smile carved into her pumpkin face. Her eyes darted from 𝗁𝐴 to 𝗂𝐵 as well as the space next to him, and her smile faded when there was no ladybug or 𝗏𝗵𝗲. Oh, great, I get you too. Fantastic, she grumbled before laying down on the monsters again. 𝗁𝐴's jaw dropped. Okay, wow, you know, we're still heroes nonetheless. So that hurts, she said. The Pumpkin Queen began waving her hand around. Yeah, boo-hoo, I hurt your feelings. You know, I turned this whole blasted city into the literal spooky capital of the world, and instead of getting ladybug and 𝗏𝗵𝗲, I get their interns. That says a lot about me and my potential as a villain, she griped. 𝗁𝐴 responded by flashing the middle finger at the 𝗂𝐴𝐵 and with an emotionless look on her face. The 𝗂𝐴𝐵's face, as well as that of 𝗂𝐵𝗵𝗲's, was one of shock. His telepathic bridge, a power he strengthened with the stolen grimoire translation, gave him the ability to see crystal clear through his victim's eyes. He facepalmed at the rude gesture while Natalie waited behind him. Pumpkin Queen, just fight her already, he ordered her. The 𝗂𝐴𝐵 scoffed. Hell no, I accepted your terms because I wanted to fight Ladybug and 𝗏𝗵𝗲. If they're not showing up, then I won't do it, she argued. Oh no. You will fight these 2. I command you. The 𝗂𝐴𝐵 crossed her arms. Nope. Ladybug and 𝗏𝗵𝗲, or no deal. 𝗁𝐴 and 𝗂𝐵 both watched with their jaws on the floor. As she. 𝗂𝐵 nodded slowly. She's refusing to fight us. Well, that's not fair. Yes, exactly. 𝗏𝗵𝗲 bellowed. I can't believe I'm saying this, but it is not fair at all. I gave you powers and now you're refusing to use them. What the hell? You said get Ladybug and 𝗏𝗵𝗲's miraculouses in order to get what I want. Well, if there's no Ladybug and 𝗏𝗵𝗲, then... On a whim, Natalie opened her tablet and found a live stream of the confrontation. It seemed as though some people weren't turned into monsters and were recording the altercation since Alia could. Sir, I think she's a lost cause. She's refusing to fight, she said. I know, 𝗏𝗵𝗲 bellowed. The Pumpkin Queen flinched as the voice in her head exploded. Shut up. 𝗏𝗵𝗲's eye twitched. He gripped his cane as he came to terms with the situation. He repeatedly slammed his cane onto the floor in an attempt to quell his rising anger. He then raised up his arms and was about to recall the 𝗂𝐴𝐵 when a smile began to form on his face. The smile was turned on by an idea. He lowered one hand while the other reached outward with his right hand in a claw shape. It's such a shame, really. The Pumpkin Queen didn't feel it until it was too late. Suddenly, her entire body went numb, except for her head. See, I hate doing this because I want my 𝗂𝐴𝐵 to demonstrate their abilities without my interference. But sometimes drastic times call for drastic measures. While my miraculous may be the miraculous of generosity, that doesn't mean that I have total confidence in my 𝗂𝐴𝐵 not going rogue, he said. He raised his thumb slightly, forcing the Pumpkin Queen's left arm to jerk upwards. Ah, what the hell? She exclaimed. 𝗏𝗵𝗲's smile was sinister. He tightened his claw, overwhelming his victim in his own magic. Your body is mine now, Pumpkin Queen. Your mind is mine. Now fight, like your life depended on it. The 𝗂𝐴𝐵 tried to fight it, but his magic was too powerful. Her entire body fell limp to the ground, stunning the 2 heroes as well as the people watching and recording. 𝗁𝐴 grabbed the camouflage genie's lamp and approached the Pumpkin Queen. When she got close enough, the 𝗂𝐴𝐵's hand shot forward and latched onto 𝗁𝐴's arm. Startled, the fox-themed hero dropped the lamp and tried to pry her hand from her grasp. The Pumpkin Queen looked up to meet her gaze. Her eyes, previously glowing a reddish-orange tint, was now a shade of violet. As 𝗂𝐵 closed the distance between them with his shield raised, 𝗏𝗵𝗲 cackled as he had his clawed hand in the air. Now it begins. Attack them, take their miraculouses and bring them to me. The Pumpkin Queen nodded slowly. "Yes, master." She reached into her blazer's pocket and tossed out one of her pumpkins. It is only by 𝗂𝐻𝐵𝑒's reflexes that prevented 𝗔𝗂 from turning into a freakish monster. As he ran in to join the fight, he noticed that the Pumpkin Queen's hand was going to get some ammunition. Acting almost immediately, he grabbed his shield from his back and threw it at her. The turtle shell slammed into the 𝗂𝐵𝐻's arm, causing a surge of pain to travel up and throw off her aim. She threw the pumpkin into the air, narrowly missing its target. Once she recovered, the 𝗂𝐵𝐻 reached into her pocket for another pumpkin when 𝗔𝗂 managed to pry her arm loose. She leapt backwards, opening the 𝗂𝐵𝐻 up for a full-body tackle from her boyfriend. Once they both hit the ground, the fox-themed hero grabbed her flute and held it in a defensive stance as a few monsters began to approach her. The Pumpkin Queen kneed 𝗂𝐻𝐵𝐻 in the stomach, knocking the wind out of him and giving her a window to free herself from his hold. Rolling over, she pushed away from him and dug into her pocket. Pulling out her new pumpkin, she readied herself for a fight. With 𝗂𝐻𝐵𝐻 on the ground, the Pumpkin Queen took her shot and threw her weapon at the hero, only for it to be intercepted by 𝗔𝗂's flute. She turned to see the fox-themed hero with her fist raised as she delivered a right hook across the 𝗂𝐵𝐻's face. The 𝗂𝐵𝐻 steadied herself from falling over and delivered a counter to 𝗔𝗂's stomach, knocking the wind out of her. 𝗂𝐻𝐵𝐻 rose to his feet and joined in the fight. While 𝗔𝗂 and the Pumpkin Queen exchanged blows, the villain was mentally calling for any nearby monsters to assist her in her endeavor. She shifted her attention to 𝗂𝐻𝐵𝐻 as he closed in and grabbed his shield before bashing it into the 𝗂𝐻, knocking her back. Bracing herself on the two Frankenstein's monsters that were still there, the 𝗂𝐻 pushed off of them and grabbed a pumpkin from her blazer. She threw it at the turtle hero who had smacked it away with his shield. The pumpkin hit a passing Frankenstein's monster and exploded with no effect. The 𝗂𝐻 stomped her foot. "Damn you all. Do something, you magical mistakes," she bellowed, urging the monsters to act. The three Frankenstein's monsters turned to the miraculous duo and charged. What they lacked in speed they more than made up for in strength, and they demonstrated such power when they body slammed into 𝗂𝐻𝐵𝐻's shield. With one mighty swing, one of the monsters sent the turtle hero flying through the air while narrowly missing 𝗔𝗂. The fox-themed hero dropped on one foot as one of the monsters swung at her. She rose up with her flute in hand and swung at the monster's torso, but its massive size negated her strike. All it had done was annoy the beast as it raised its foot and slammed into the ground. 𝗔𝗂 rolled away as the monster's foot crushed the concrete where she was standing. As she gained some distance from the monster, her ears perked up. The sound of a dozen howls pierced through the unnaturally night sky. The Pumpkin Queen raised her head to the sky and smiled. "Pure effect. My pack is here," she said. 𝗔𝗂 spun on her heel when she heard the growl. She leapt away as a giant werewolf barreled past her with its snarling teeth and piercing red eyes. Skidding to a stop, the werbeast turned to meet 𝗔𝗂's wide eyes. "Don't worry, these aren't people, I think." The Pumpkin Queen shrugged nonchalantly with a pumpkin in hand. "My witches up there are tossing these at random, so these could be anything. Although, maybe they are people." The fox-themed hero continued to hold her gaze on one of the werewolves. "They are pretty. They kinda look like werewolves from Skyrim," she noted. That perked the villain up for a moment. "Oh, you play that too?" 𝗔𝗂 shrugged. "From time to time. Oh, I'm kinda hoping to find some silver somewhere," she said. "Good luck with that." The Pumpkin Queen waved her hand, signaling the wolves to attack. The wolves and the Frankenstein's monsters both charged at the fox-themed hero with blood in their eyes. Her heart was racing as she scanned the battlefield, hoping for some way to slip away and use her mirage on something. Behind her, 𝗂𝐻𝐵𝐻 was just picking himself back up from where he was thrown. She eyed the monsters coming at her. They were slow, but they were closing in. Behind her, she could hear the heavy breathing of a dozen werewolves inching closer to her. She wasn't even sure if they were people by how they were moving. Swallowing nervously, 𝗔𝗂 gripped her flute and sped toward the towering behemoths in front of her. She weaved through the giant monsters, catching many of them by surprise. As she did, she heard the sounds of the wolves slamming into them while trying to chase her. She also heard the sound of some of the monsters reacting by groaning as they were pushed by the wolves. She slipped out of the crowded mass of the monsters and sped toward the Pumpkin Queen with her flute raised. The 𝗂𝐻 smiled as she readied a pumpkin to transform the hero into her personal monster slave. Before she could throw the weapon, 𝗔𝗂 leapt over her with her increased agility. The 𝗂𝐻 looked on in confusion before she realized her plan and turned her attention back at the mass of green flesh and piercing red eyes just barreling into her. The monsters and the werewolves both flattened her as soon as they slammed into her. Their attention was not on their actions, however, since their primary job was to capture the heroes. As they continued to give chase, 𝗔𝗂 leapt off of the monument and screamed at her partner. "Now, shelter!" The Pumpkin Queen watched as 𝗂𝐻𝐵𝐻 threw his shield over her head and at the horde of monsters. The shield hit the head of one of the Frankenstein's monsters and activated its power. A dome of green energy suddenly manifested around them, trapping them all in place. The 𝐒𝐭𝐲 watched in horror as her reinforcements were bound in place. With the monsters out of the way, 𝗂𝗏 leapt off of the side of the monument and ricocheted off of a parked car and seemingly flew toward the villain with her flute raised up. She body slammed into the villain and swung when she stumbled, nearly knocking the pumpkin head off of her shoulders. Keeping the momentum going, 𝗂𝗏 sped past her and met with her partner. As the two heroes made some space, so did the 𝗂𝐭𝐲. She shook off the effects of the attack as she raised her head up to meet them. The butterfly emblem had made itself visible to the heroes as 𝗂𝗵𝗲's voice greeted them. "My, you two sure are being feisty today," he said. The two heroes flinched as his words sent chills down their spines. "What are you doing?" 𝗂𝗏 asked. The Pumpkin Queen laughed. "I'm ensuring my victory, at the least. With this advancement of my powers, I can be anyone and see everything. If my loyal 𝗂𝐭𝐲 decide to break our arrangement, I will no longer simply relinquish victory to you. No, now I have a new choice. I will fight you with everything that my 𝗂𝐭𝐲 have, and even if I break them mentally, I will do whatever it takes to win." 𝗂𝗵𝗲 said, "Magic writes its own rules, and this is one of them." 𝗂𝐻𝐵 raised his shield as 𝗂𝗏 grabbed her magic lamp. "Regardless, you won't be winning here, 𝗂𝗵𝗲. You're not getting any miraculous today," the turtle hero exclaimed. "Oh, a rookie displaying this much confidence is surely something I've never seen before." 𝗂𝗏 nodded. "Because it's the truth. You won't be getting any chance at the ladybug and black cat miraculouses for a while," she said with a smile on her face. That's right, because they're not here." 𝗂𝐻𝐵 finished. The 𝗂𝐭𝐲 didn't say a word initially as 𝗂𝗵𝗲 tried to process their statement. "That's right, 𝗂𝗵𝗲. Ladybug and Cat Noir aren't showing up because they aren't even here. They're vacationing in an alternate universe." The Pumpkin Queen's jaw dropped, literally. The piece of actual pumpkin falling disgusted 𝗂𝗏 as the purple eyes of the villain continued to stare at them. Wait, what?" 𝗂𝗏 chuckled. "Yeah, they've been gone for a while. They'll be finishing their vacation soon, but they trusted us to keep you from going crazy until they get back," she revealed. "Yeah, so even if you somehow win, you're not getting anything from us. We don't even have that box thing that Ladybug has," 𝗂𝗏 said. Back in his lair, 𝗂𝗵𝗲 was slouching in place with his jaw wide open. Behind him, Natalie's eyes were wide as she clutched her tablet close to her chest. She stole a few glances at her boss, who had not said a word. The other butterflies in the room were beginning to feel agitated as they fluttered around the masked villain. Natalie didn't need superpowers to feel the rage that was building up in her boss as his unusually prolonged silence continued to persist. She wasn't even trying to calm him as she knew that his outburst would only be directed at her instead. And then, after a few minutes of silence from both villains, the cord snapped within him. He bellowed out a scream so powerful that even his 𝗂𝐭𝐲 began to mirror his actions, though for different reasons. With 𝗂𝗵𝗲's power, he was capable of whispering sweet nothings and commands to his victims through a telepathic link. He strengthened that link when he took control of the villain's body, thereby increasing his own presence within the victim's mind. And his scream snapped the Pumpkin Queen out of her trance. As soon as it registered inside her head, the spell that kept her under his command was shattered, and her mind was flooded with rage. She screamed as 𝗂𝗵𝗲's tantrum burst through with great strength, shifting her focus away from the two heroes in front of her. "Damn it, ALLL. I've had it with these heroes being one step ahead of me. I've had it with Ladybug and Cat Noir being just out of reach of me. I've had it with these heroes," he bellowed to the world. All of the butterflies scattered throughout the room as his rage terrified them all. Natalie began backing away from her boss, hoping that the elevator that brought her to that very room would take her back outside. One good day where everything falls into place. Is that too much to ask? While the Pumpkin Queen continued to suffer from 𝗂𝗵𝗲's tantrum, 𝗂𝗏 Rouge and 𝗂𝗏 sprung into action. They both charged at the 𝗂𝐭𝐲 poised to strike. They were about to make contact with the villain when she regained her senses. She eyed the pair as they got close and expertly grabbed one of her pumpkins from her jacket. She tossed it at their feet and then exploded. The orange gas that erupted forced the heroes to leap backwards and out of danger. Now distracted, the Pumpkin Queen sped through the gas and body-checked 𝗂𝗏 while shifting attention to 𝗂𝗏. As she swung at the fox-themed hero, 𝗂𝗏 kept stepping backwards and avoiding her punches. Her grip on her flute tightened as used it to deflect one of her punches. Now backed against the wall of the monument, 𝗂𝗏 dodged as the Pumpkin Queen threw punches at her face. Her attacks cracked the foundation of the building as soon the 𝗂𝐭𝐲 switched to lower body attacks, jamming her fist into 𝗂𝗏's sides. The pain, although it was negated heavily in the suit thanks to its magic, continued to surge into the hero. She felt her breaths being forced out of her as she tried to block the attacks. The Pumpkin Queen alternated between punches to the face and to the stomach, landing very few hits in each area while 𝗂𝗏 was battling a monster that had barely arrived to assist its master. The Pumpkin Queen, now tired from the fighting, reached out and grabbed 𝗂𝗏's fox ears on top of her head and pinned them to the structure. the hero cried out as her senses were in overdrive. With her stuck, the Pumpkin Queen leaned in with her butterfly outline on her face. So Miss 𝗧𝗍𝗪, are you ready to give up? Rena's eyes widened. 𝗂𝗍𝗪, I remember when I had your identity revealed. I know who you are. I know your friends and your family. If you don't surrender to me today, some light pressure on your loved ones will see to it that I get what I want, 𝗂𝗵𝗲 said through his 𝗂𝐵. Rena continued to struggle as she eyed 𝗂𝐽𝐫. He was dodging the linen wrappings from one of the mummies while a Frankenstein's monster tried grabbing at him from behind. So, what do you say? As Rena continued to struggle, she looked at the villain and raised her hand. She held it over her miraculous and pressed it as close to her person as possible. I will never betray 𝗧𝗪𝗏. She trusted me to look after the city with this power. And I'll be damned if I give up here, she declared. The Pumpkin Queen sneered at the hero. I'm not giving up on her. I'm not giving up on my partner. And I'm certainly not going to give up on the city. So take your 𝗂𝐵 and shove them. She slammed the heel of her foot into the 𝗂𝐵's toes, earning a right scream from her. Her grip failed as Rena slipped away and back-kicked the villain in the stomach. She fell to the ground as the fox-themed hero grabbed her flute. You're done, 𝗂𝗵𝗲, she said. The Pumpkin Queen looked up at the hero and smiled. Not until the last song has been sung, 𝗧𝗍𝗪, 𝗂𝗵𝗲 said through his 𝗂𝐵. The villain rose to her feet and was about to attack the hero when she felt the ground tremor. Rena felt it too as what felt like a rolling earthquake was heading toward them. The villain turned to see a horde of werewolves barreling toward the both of them with death in their eyes. The Pumpkin Queen smiled as she turned to Rena. My dear pets, don't worry about me, for there are two heroes here. Retrieve 𝗂𝗪𝗪's miraculous and bring me back the leftovers. She bellowed to the air. Rena watched as the wolves continued their advancement. Not a single one of them had diverted as per her instructions. Instead, they continued to make their way toward the both of them. The villain had turned back to them and her eyes widened once she realized her predicament. The Pumpkin Queen tried waving her hand at them. Go, retrieve the turtle's miraculous, she commanded. The wolves didn't comply. They continued to stampede and were inching closer to the two combatants. Rena's ears dropped. They're not listening. Run, like hell. I created them. They won't lay a claw on me. The 𝗂𝐵 argued. You want to test that theory? The Pumpkin Queen watched the stampede grow closer. She kept waving her hand and shouting commands at them with no results. Acting on a whim, she booked it down the street with Rena. The horde was closing in on them as they were twice as fast as they were. The 𝗂𝐵 screamed into the air. I feel like a damn lion cub. Long live the king. Rena shouted. Long live the king. They continued to run down the street with the wolves in tow. The Pumpkin Queen tried to throw commands at them with no effect, leaving her with very few options. She glanced at the sky to her two witches continuing to throw pumpkins at the population below. They seemed to be occupied since they were not conserving their ammunition. Must have been a tourist spot. She looked at Rena with her flute in hand. She could try playing a song and charming them to stop, but the question became, would it actually work? A snake would be better since she had not heard of a wolf being charmed with a flute, and there was no way she had silver on her as well. She looked down at her right hand. Wrapped around her wrist was a large bracelet that went up the forearm and wrapped around her thumb. There were several pumpkins as well as werewolves, witches, and other Halloween symbols. Her favorite bracelet housed the 𝗂𝐵, and if it was removed, maybe then her werewolves would stop chasing them. Besides the bracelet, there was nothing else left. She grabbed the object and removed it. Rena, the fox hero, turned to her. Stop them. She tossed her the bracelet. Rena caught the 𝗂𝐵ized object with ease. Once she had it, she stopped in place and wore a big smile on her face. Excellent. The Pumpkin Queen stopped just in time to see it. The wolves caught up to them, and when one of them lunged forward with its jaws wide open, Rena watched as the creature turned into a puff of orange smoke. The 𝗂𝐵 watched in horror as the horde of wolves all disappeared in a puff of orange smoke, leaving an empty street and two unconscious mummies at 𝗂𝗪𝗪's feet. Rena looked at her with her smile. Sorry, but it was the best idea I could come up with, and keeping the image intact while you were punching me wasn't easy. I almost lost them a few times, she explained. The Pumpkin Queen stood there in stunned silence. Her pumpkin jaw had fallen to the ground as her blank eyes stared into Rena's soul. In any case, no more evil doing for you, little 𝗂𝐵, she said. She dropped the bracelet and smashed it with her foot, releasing the 𝗂𝐵 within. Pulling out the genie's lamp from its camouflaged spot, she opened the lid and allowed its magic to suck in the 𝗂𝐵. Time to de-evilize. As the 𝗂𝐵 was sucked in, the magic latched onto the world around them. The dark, Halloween night was suddenly ripped from the sky and converged on the lamp's spout. The two witches found themselves on the ground and turned back to normal humans. Their magical disguises were ripped from them like a lint ball being sucked in by a vacuum hose. The monsters all lost their appearances, including the wolves that attacked earlier. With his shield filled with regular humans, 𝗂𝗪𝗪 dropped his magical shield and watched as the world returned to normal. Still, it was nighttime, but now it was without the yellow moon and the bats and monsters everywhere. Once all of the magic was absorbed, 𝗳𝗏 sealed the lamp's lid. With no magic left, the Pumpkin Queen returned to normal. She was a former classmate of theirs from college, 𝗃𝗁𝐲 𝗵𝗵. And when she came to, she rubbed her forehead. Oh, what happened? She wondered. 𝗳𝗏 replaced the lamp onto her forearm as she bent down and grabbed the bracelet. Thankfully, it had been fixed. The fox hero knelt down to the former victim and handed her her bracelet. You all right? She asked. The girl nodded. Where am I? What happened? You were akumatized. Unfortunately, 𝗳𝗏 said. I'm guessing that it had something to do for Halloween. She said. Oh, right. Oh, my stupid brother. He ruined my next 5 Halloween costumes because he thought it was a stupid holiday. She cursed his name. I've been working on them for months. Whoa, easy now, 𝗳𝗏 said. Look, I get it. My little sisters get into my stuff all the time. Personal space is hard to come by these days. Huh? Why yeah. How do you deal with your sisters, anyway? 𝗳𝗏 smiled. Hide your stuff better, or establish some ground rules. I'm sure your brother has something he doesn't want messed with. He needs to know that your stuff matters to you and you won't stand for him messing with you, she said. The girl smiled. Thanks, 𝗳𝗏 Rouge, she said. 𝗳𝗏 ruffled the girl's hair. All right, now you gotta get home. I'll transform real quick, recharge, and walk you there, she offered. Oh no, that's not necessary. I don't live too far away, the girl argued. Why, you sure? 𝗳𝗏 wondered. Definitely. I can see my place, actually. I'll be fine, she said. 𝗳𝗏 smiled and the two waved each other off. Once she had left, 𝗂𝐻𝗄𝐻 caught up to his partner. We're gonna transform soon, he said. The fox-themed hero nodded. Yeah, let's go home. They turned and were about to head home when they saw another Akuma appearing. The two heroes groaned as the butterfly inched closer to them before touching down on the ground. It sat there for a moment, confusing the two heroes standing there. And then, a cloud of black smoke erupted from the Akuma. And when the smoke cleared, the image of 𝗂𝗏𝗲 stood before them. So, you won again. The two heroes raised their weapons. What are you doing here? 𝗳𝗏 demanded. And how are you doing that? 𝗂𝐻𝗄𝐻 wondered. 𝗂𝗏𝗲 smiled. This is the result of hard work and research. Ladybug's old master practically gave me half the translated pages from the grimoire, so now I am unlocking more and more of my power as time goes on, he said. But that's not why I'm here. Are you here to surrender then? Because that would be a great late birthday present, Alia said. 𝗂𝗏𝗲 laughed. Hardly. In fact, I want some clarification. You said before that Ladybug and Cat Noir aren't here, correct? The two slowly nodded, not relaxing in the slightest. Damn, that complicates things dramatically. Why is that? 𝗂𝐻𝗄𝐻 wondered. Because my sole goal is to obtain their miraculouses. Anything less is irrelevant to me. And unfortunately, you two are in their place. It would have been easier if they had left you with their miraculouses for safekeeping. But I doubt that's the case, he said. In any event, since they are not here and will likely be back later rather than sooner, then there is no point to me sending out my Akuma. Ouch, you don't think we're relevant? 𝗳𝗏 said. No, you two are the annoying paid interns that I have to suffer with. Both of your burp. The three jumped as the genie's lamp on 𝗳𝗏's wrist reformed in her hands. The spout belched out the purified butterfly as it flew away. 𝗂𝗏𝗲 watched the butterfly flutter away before continuing. Anyway, your miraculouses are worthless to me. The whole of Paris knows what I want. And if it's not even in this dimension, then there's no point. So what? You're done. For now. I'll know when they've returned to this realm. Once they're back, we shall resume this little game of ours. Sure, it'll be 4 against 3, but the odds are in my favor, he said. 3. I know of you and Mayura, but who's the third? 𝗂𝐻𝗄𝐻 asked. 𝗂𝗏𝗲 laughed as the purple smoke began to reappear around his feet. When that question is answered, you will know just how screwed you really are. Until then, the image of 𝗂𝗏𝗲 disappeared, leaving the two heroes with a minute before transforming back. The Akuma then fluttered away, purifying itself before disappearing into the night. 𝗳𝗏 shook her head violently as she grabbed 𝗂𝐻𝗄𝐻's arm and booked it. Come on, Shelly, we gotta go, she said urgently. But what about 𝗂𝗏𝗲? She shook her head. He's taking a vacation too. It'll be fine, she reasoned. Oh, besides, I'm tired and so are you. We're going home, she said. And my place or yours? 𝗳𝗏 turned and smiled at the turtle hero. Our separate homes. We'll do that later, but I want to sleep. 𝗂𝗄𝗄𝗻 blushed as they both ventured off to home. When the elevator touched down at the bottom of the shaft, 𝗵𝗏 led Adrien and Mayhatsum off and into the structure. It wasn't as they had thought it was, as it only consisted of a small hallway and a door at the end of it. As they approached, Miraculous Duo noticed that May had brought a large pair of boots with her, futuristic in style and with turbines on the soles and the back of the ankles. 𝗵𝗏 wondered how someone could even wear these. May turned back to them and smiled. What? I want them back. It took a while to fix them only to find out that someone stole them, she said. Adrien shrugged. As they walked, 𝗵𝗏's earlier suspicions were put to rest when she saw May looking around in disbelief. Wow, a structure like this must have taken a long time to build. And right under the school's noses, she marveled. Well, it is a big school, 𝗂𝗵𝗲 commented. Yeah, but there are sensors all over the place. They bury those things just below the surface and arm them at night. This is impossible unless someone somehow deactivated them and dug deep down without anyone noticing. May said. What about quirks? 𝗵𝗲 wondered. You'd need a few people anyway. We're not gods, she said. 𝗵𝗲 and 𝗂𝗵𝗲 both eyed each other. Why would a bunker even be put here then? May shrugged. Maybe the old days. Old days, wondered 𝗂𝗵𝗲. Yeah, before All Might. There were villains running crazy. There was no symbol of peace back then, so there weren't many strong heroes to take on the tons of villains. Maybe this bunker was built for that, she deduced. 𝗵𝗲 raised a brow. Sounds like some dark days, she mused. Yep. What we don't learn in modern history of heroics, we learn from online. There are people who remember those days. I hear Midoriya watches those videos, she said. They walked through the doors and gasped. Inside was a massive room, almost as big as the holding room for their provisional licensing exams. The room was layered with white panels and fluorescent lights. Some were flickering as the room appeared old because of a few missing panels and rust. In the middle of the room was a large desk that spanned from one end of the room to the other. As they walked through the room, 𝗂𝗵𝗲 noticed the age of the room. May, I think you're right. This place looks old, he said. Like someone hasn't been in here in a long time. 𝗵𝗲 noted. She knelt down and checked the floor. Maybe not. 𝗂𝗵𝗲 looked down and saw it. Faint footprints were seen walking their path toward the large table in the middle of the room. He reached behind him and grabbed his staff. Bugaboo. She looked up at him and nodded. She grabbed her yo-yo and held it close. May, unaware of their uneasiness, walked past them and toward the large table in the middle of the room. When she reached the table, she found a chaotic scene. Papers and blueprints were all askew with several dried stains of coffee on a few papers. Some of the papers included the specs for the original QICDs as well as some upgrades that were being discussed in the support classrooms. Hardening putty for capture weapons were highlighted on some of the papers and was included in the specs for the QICD. She grabbed the papers and began to shift through them. Notes from her own inventions were also included in the pile, with many items from her power armor to her considered upgrades for her Air Force gloves for Midori. As she shifted through them, May raised a particular stack of papers up. Hello, what do we have here? She wondered aloud. She scanned the papers, which included the original specs for the training robots for the entrance exam. A few copies of the 0-point robots were especially highlighted with added notes on them. The last piece of paper that was on the pile was not a UA blueprint, but instead a handwritten one. It showed a hand-drawn 0-pointer with added armor, highlighted optical sensors, blunt force missile systems, and more. The project name was Project Opus. Meanwhile, 𝗵𝗲 was checking out some dusty old boxes off in the corner all stacked onto each other. She didn't register the boxes until she got close, and when she opened one of them, her eyes widened. There were smaller containers inside with several old cameras. Some looked like film cameras, with their sleek design and mechanical adjustment tools, while others were digital. As she shifted through them, she found a folder with a bunch of pictures inside. As 𝗂𝗵𝗲 was checking out the control table with May, 𝗵𝗲 called to the both of them. Come here real quick, she called out, pulling the tinkering support student away. 𝗂𝗵𝗲 brought them both to where his partner was as she showed them the pictures. There were pictures of a small group of people huddled around together in front of a large screen. Some were watching with wide eyes and their stances told the story of excitement while others were close to one another, embracing themselves. Other pictures showed more people wandering around the bunker with a few heroes huddled together. Their over-the-top costumes gave them away to the trio. As they continued looking through the pictures, 𝗵𝗲 noted that they were all sad in each shot. May, you were right. This place was a safe haven for people, she said. May nodded. She grabbed a stack that included the first picture and turned it around. Oh my god. 𝗂𝗵𝗲 turned to meet the pink-haired tinkerer's gaze. This has a note. Listen to this. Taken during disaster at Naboo Station. All Might saves hundreds. 𝗵𝗲's eyes widened. May showed them the picture. This was the day. It was when All Might debuted over 20 years ago. There are people here watching that take place. 𝗂𝗵𝗲 felt a smile form. This is history right here. We gotta take these back. 𝗵𝗲 nodded as she searched through the box. Good thing that there are flash drives in here. We can use these to make more prints, she said. Once she grabbed what they needed, they turned to head back to the elevator when all the lights in the room turned bright red. An alarm began to blare as multiple heavy-duty doors began to shut themselves, cutting them off from the elevator. 𝗂𝗵𝗲 prepared for a cataclysm to escape when a voice erupted in the room. Well, what do we have here? A bunch of trespassers snooping through my stuff, eh? How unheroic of you three. The voice boomed. The trio turned toward the large desk to find a holograph of the Tinkerer looming over them. Her mask was replaced with a simple hood and a pair of goggles shining through the shadows. A pin holding the hood together was in the shape of a machine cog with twin wrenches. Honestly, this would be considered breaking and entering since someone broke my lock. Adrian smiled. To be fair, this is private property and we had permission from the current head of the property, he said. That's not a warrant, but there are private property laws that give Principal 𝗍𝗂 the right to inspect the property, May said. The tinkerer groaned. Regardless, you are trespassing, and while I would love to study the two of you some more, it seems that my timetable has to be accelerated because of the heroes snooping around. Thankfully, my QICDs can work around the clock and in greater numbers while I cannot, she said. Sections of the wall opened up, revealing to the trio several sets of red rods with clocks on them. I can't have the heroes coming in here and discovering the rest of my plans, so I guess this is goodbye. While I can't just destroy the place right now, I might as well give you a little parting gift. More sections opened up with several QICDs popping out of them. The trio huddled together as the robots began to surround them. May reached into her pocket and pulled out an extendable shock baton with a heavy tip. The clocks on the rod started at 10 minutes and began to count down. Ta-ta zoomy zoom. This has been fun. The hologram cut out immediately, leaving the trio to their dilemma. May's eyes widened. Wait, did she say? Watch it. One of the QICDs rushed in with its blade extended. It raised it high in the air before stabbing the ground where May was just a second ago. Thanks to Marinette's quick thinking, she grabbed the pink-haired tinkerer and leapt out of the way. Adrian raised his staff to block a different strike from a different robot. Adrian held his ground as the robot tried to force its way through his guard. Shifting to the side, the cat-themed hero deflected the strike and leapt into a spinning roundhouse kick to the side of the head. The robot didn't stagger as he would have liked, instead swinging its fist around and striking him in his core. Adrian fell to his knees as two more robots stood over him. One raised its fist and was about to knock him out when Marinette lassoed its fist and jerked it into the faceplate of the other unit. Marinette came charging in and wrapped her legs around the neck of the robot before pulling it over herself. Adrian smiled as he slowly rose to his feet with his staff in hand. As he swiped at a unit, he saw from the corner of his eye that May was having a hell of a time. Unlike the others in her class, May had recently gotten a little bit of combat training in. Since usually her creations would go haywire and sometimes try to attack, she learned some skills from Ieyasu in handling small weapons. The shock baton was a small improvement of the baton that the everything hero gave her before. Of course, using it against the babies she made wasn't easy, since her quirk wasn't a combat ability and, therefore, not something that can be countered. The robots could only swing with their blades. She was able to dodge them pretty well and use her baton to send small shockwaves through them and shorting their circuits one shot at a time. Adrian focused on the task at hand. He blocked another strike and used his staff's taser feature, an improvement from his first version, to send an electric shock through the robot's body. May watched this and withdrew her baton. Aim for below the headplate in the back. There's a kill switch there that'll trigger a full shutdown, she mentioned. Adrian smiled and swept behind an attacking robot and jammed the tip of his staff into the back of its head. The QICD couldn't do anything since the attack used a quirk and it took less than a second for Adrian to execute. It simply jolted in place before falling over, slamming into the ground. As Adrian admired the robot's death, he turned to Marinette. Bugaboo, use this. I need to get us out of here, he said as he tossed her his staff. Taking the weapon and charging it, Marinette moved to her partner. I'll cover you. Adrian smiled. Thanks, Cataclysm. The blonde hero slammed his hand into the steel wall that kept them trapped. Destructive energy surged through the wall as the material began to turn black, but it did not crumble and fall away like the robots before. As he kept his hand on the wall, Marinette and May were being boxed in. The spotted heroine kept blocking strikes from the robots while May aimed low and sent shocks through the robots to make some breathing room. Adrian, what's going on? Marinette wondered. The blonde shook his head. I don't know. I can't push through. He strained as the energy continued to flow. Marinette cursed. She blocked another strike, and instead of waiting for May to counter, she aimed for the center of a unit's headplate and shorted the unit's circuits out. Try it again, she wondered. Adrian nodded. Pressing his hand further into the wall, he spoke again. Cataclysm. More energy surged through the ring and into the wall. He felt the wall give way a little more as he began to feel the second wall behind the first. As he pushed through, Adrian suddenly began to feel something: exhaustion. The second wall inside was barely starting to decay as he pushed on through. Gotta keep going. See Cataclysm. More energy surged into the second wall and it began to fade away. The exhaustion that he was feeling was becoming like a 50-pound weight on his shoulders. His eyes felt just as heavy as he began to brace himself against the first wall. Adrian, Marinette called out as soon as she saw him brace himself. He raised a hand at her. I am fine. I got this, he said. See Cataclysm. As he continued to push through, May eyed the clock nearby. We won't get too far without those going off, she mentioned. Damn, that tinkerer really upgraded these things, she said as she ducked from a swipe from one of the Met. Adrian's tapped out. His miraculous doesn't have a 𝗂𝐵𝐵 with him, so his own energy is being used, 𝗵𝗏 deduced. Ooh, what's that? Some type of power source? May wondered. 𝗵𝗏 shook her head. I'll explain later, but now duck. May's reflexes were quick for someone in the lab all day. She dodged as a unit tried stabbing at her head, instead striking the wall and embedding the blade within. May slipped behind the attacking unit and jammed her shock baton into the back of its head, destroying the unit from the inside out. Unfortunately, the unit reacted by sealing the rear of its headplate, trapping the baton in place. May tried yanking the baton from its trap but failed to do so. Damn it, I like the baton. Leave it. I am almost through. Adrian looked through the 2 holes he had made with his cataclysm. He could see the elevator they came down on still sitting there. One more. I can do one more before we break through. 𝗵𝗏 eyed her partner. Adrian, you're using too much of your own energy. You can't. Yes, I can. I got this bugaboo. He turned to her and smiled. I can do this, he said. May was watching the clock. Less than a minute. Adrian, when we get out of this, I'll sweep you off your feet and kiss you, especially when we get back. 𝗵𝗏 promised. The blonde chuckled. Words of encouragement, bugaboo. He focused on the wall again. Here we go. Cataclysm. Pouring all he had into the cataclysm produced the results they needed. The whole wall crumbled and the trio made a break for it. The tinkerer probably shut the elevator, didn't she? 𝗵𝗏 wondered. May nodded. Thankfully, I put the hover souls on the elevator. Slip them on and use your yo-yo to get us up there, she suggested. 𝗵𝗏 nodded. Adrian, you all right? He nodded, somewhat satisfied with his answer. 𝗵𝗏 pushed ahead and grabbed the 2 boots. She slipped them on quite easily and activated them thanks to the switch that was newly installed on them. Grab on, she commanded. May and Adrian latched onto her as she launched her yo-yo up the elevator shaft. Latching onto something near the top, 𝗵𝗏 leapt onto the wall and blasted off up the 2. As they left, the time ran out. The clocks all hit 0 and the bombs that were inside exploded, destroying the few QICDs left behind from their fight. As the trio climbed up the shaft, May noticed the fires from the explosion traveling up to swallow them whole. Whoa, angry 𝗵𝗃𝐽𝐻 like explosions on our asses. She panicked. Adrian adjusted his hands on 𝗵𝗏 so they wrapped around her stomach. You got this, 𝗵𝗏, he whispered into her ear. The adjustment of her hands and his words of encouragement nearly distracted the young heroine. She pulled back on her yo-yo and lassoed another anchor up at the top. May reached up to 𝗵𝗏. My bomb shelter. The spotted heroine nodded. That's the plan. I hope it's open. May nodded. Once they breached through the shaft and returned to the warehouse, 𝗵𝗏 took only a second to find the bomb shelter and lasso to the inside. Using all of her strength, she pulled all 3 of them inside and had Adrian shut the door. No sooner had the door sealed did the explosion overtake the warehouse. The full power of the bombs inside destroyed the building, sending flaming debris and scattering some of May's inventions all over the property, including the shelter. The explosion alerted everyone on the campus while startling civilians nearby. The teachers that were following through with their assignments all surged toward the explosion to see the commotion. Midoriya and Uraraka, who weren't too far away from the school, knew the sound of an explosion very well thanks to Bakugo. They shared a look before running back towards the gates. When the explosion settled, the bomb shelter that May made some time ago settled in front of the 2 dorms. Lucky enough, the shelter had proved to be effective by keeping everyone safe from the explosion. But when it settled, 𝗵𝗏, Adrian wondered in pitch darkness. Why yeah, came a response. Adrian hesitated for a moment. Tell me that this is you. A loud smack erupted from the darkness. Yeah, that's you.